Good evening, Rockville. Today is October 7th, 2024, and we'll begin meeting 24-24. Let's join together in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Just as a community reminder, we have several proclamations and recognitions for this evening. We are doing these at the beginning of each month now, trying a new approach and seeing how it goes. We will have each of the council members read them, and then we may have a brief break, depending on how long they will be taking. And then we will start again at 6:30. So just wanted to share that. I'll send another reminder for those who are watching us on TV. But let's begin, colleagues.
All right, welcome everyone. I am honored to read the first proclamation of the evening, which is for economic development, one of this mayor and council's core focus areas. Whereas the economic growth and stability of the state affect all regions and jurisdictions of Maryland, and whereas the city of Rockville is a vital component of Maryland's economic success, representing over 9,500 businesses and 72,000 employees in a wide range of for-profit and not-for-profit sectors. Now, therefore, the mayor and council hereby proclaim the week of October 21st through 25th, 2024, as Economic Development Week in the city of Rockville, Maryland, in recognitions of the importance of economic development and its role in supporting the business community, creating new and dynamic opportunities for residents and visitors, and enhancing the fiscal health of the city. I move the proclamation.
Second. Councilman Van Grack, seconds. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye. And I believe we have some representatives of Rockville Economic Development, Inc., our partner, Bay Ma, I believe. Please come up and accept the proclamation. Would you like to say a few words?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
You can all come up.
Yeah. I'll start with board members. Yes.
I'm shocked.
On behalf of Rockville Economic Development, Inc., Ready, board, and staff, I want to extend our sincere thanks for this proclamation and the city of Rockville's ongoing support. The city's recognition of Maryland Economic Development Week highlights the essential role that economic development plays in fulfilling Rockville's vision of rising together. At Ready, our mission is to cultivate a thriving, diverse, and vibrant Rockville. Over the past year, Ready has made remarkable strides across key sectors such as life sciences and small-scale manufacturing, while continuing to support the small businesses that are the backbone of our community. Ready supported over 275 businesses in the last fiscal year and identified small-scale manufacturing as a critical driver in reducing commercial vacancies and fostering new business growth, particularly in areas like Turnbrook and Rock East District. Ready has also made targeted investments in early and mid-stage manufacturing businesses through specialized training programs designed to spur growth. As we look forward to 2025, Ready remains committed to focusing on key sectors like biotech, life sciences, small-scale manufacturing, and supporting entrepreneurship. Additionally, Ready will explore green technologies as a potential growth industry that aligns with both economic and sustainable goals. We invite businesses and community members to learn more about Ready's efforts by visiting rockvilleready.org. Thank you to the city and mayor and the council for your continued partnership and support in advancing Rockville's economic development. And here is our CEO and president of Ready, Cindy Rivard, and our deputy, Rochelle Wilson, and my fellow board member, Todd Pearson. Thank you very much.
All right. So it's my pleasure to have the honor of this proclamation for Diwali. And just before I start, let me just say, it really is something that Rockville is so diverse and inclusive that we have religious celebrations and celebrations all throughout Rockville, throughout the months. So I just would be remiss not to say how important it is to me and everybody here that we celebrate different faiths, different communities, and we come together. And it's really important that we have that togetherness in Rockville. So, without further ado, whereas Diwali is a festival of lights and one of the major festivals celebrated by Hindus, Jains, and some Buddhists, and whereas the festival lasts 5 days and is celebrated during the Hindu lunar solar month Kartika between mid-October and mid-November. Day 1, the Terrace. Day 2, Shuri Diwali. Day 3, Lakshma Puja Kali. Day 4, Kuvardhan Puja. And Day 5, Bhai Juj Vishwakarma. The last day of the festival ends with Bhai Juj. Now, therefore, the Mayor and Council of Rockville, Maryland, hereby proclaim October 31st, 2024 as Diwali in Rockville, and invite all residents to understand his principles and enjoy the celebration of the victory of light over darkness, good over evil, and knowledge over ignorance. The festival encourages everyone to share the principles of the Festival of Lights and to share love for all residents of Rockville and beyond. Madam Mayor, I move the proclamation.
It's been seconded by Councilman Shaw. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Please come up. Mayor. Yes, please, welcome.
Thank you. On behalf of the Hindu community in Rockville and Montgomery County, and as a Rockville employee, I'm honored to accept this proclamation for Diwali. Diwali holds a special place in the hearts of billions of people worldwide, symbolizing triumph over darkness, good over evil, and hope over despair. Our city has always embraced these values, and as a community, we are deeply grateful for the inclusivity that has always been an overarching principle for Rockville. Wishing everyone a joyous and prosperous Diwali. Thank you.
Thank you, Manisha Tiwari. Just wanted to make sure that everyone knows how incredible our staff is. Thank you.
you so much. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, no, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Whose phone is this? Manisha?
It's my honor to present the Arts and Humanities Month proclamation. And I was happy to find out that there are very easy ways to participate in showing your support for this month. Some of them I've already done, such as reading a book, dancing to music you love, singing in the car, and putting artwork on your refrigerator. Whereas the month of October has been recognized as National Arts and Humanities Month by thousands of communities, cities, and states across the country, as well as by the White House and Congress. And now, therefore, the Mayor and Council of the City of Rockville, Maryland, do hereby proclaim October 2024 as National Arts and Humanities Month in Rockville, Maryland, and call upon our residents to celebrate and promote the arts and culture in our nation, and to specifically encourage the greater participation by those said residents in taking action for the arts and humanities in their towns and cities. I move the proclamation.
Councilmember Fulton, seconds. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Do you want to introduce Ms. Karen Askin?
And I would like to introduce Ms. Karen Askin to please accept the proclamation. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Would you like to say a few words?
Sure. I don't have any prepared remarks, but I was very struck with what you said earlier about Diwali. More than ever, the world needs to focus on what is common to all of us as human beings, and the arts are so important. They speak without words, and so it's very exciting for us to do this. I also want to thank everyone on Mayor and Council and to our new city manager. The Cultural Arts Commission is very much looking forward to our new arts manager starting and to a great year ahead. And speaking of Diwali, I invite all of you to VisArts. We will be doing a great day of Diwali events, great for kids, and it's a wonderful chance to learn about a beautiful holiday that, let's face it, good over evil, festival of lights. Where else have we heard those, kind of human traits? So come on over, and we look forward to seeing you. Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you. Now I'll move over to a little bit of a heavier topic, but an important one. Though not in my home, I have personally witnessed domestic violence. I have seen the effects of domestic violence. And during the COVID pandemic, I saw more than ever that home is not safe for everyone. And I share my personal experiences, as well as believe it's important that we do proclamations like this, so that someone can hear and know that you're not alone and that you can reach out for help. And if you know someone who needs help, to be that person to help them to get to help. So it is my honor to read this proclamation. Whereas the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence reports that on average, nearly 20 people per minute are physically abused by an intimate partner in the United States. And victims of intimate partner violence lose a total of 8 million days of paid work each year. Whereas extreme jealousy, blaming, rage, control of a partner's spending, and whereabouts, put down, stalking, threats of bodily harm to a partner or a partner's loved ones, or even pets are often imposed on victims. And whereas the theme for Domestic Violence Awareness 2024 is Healed, Hold, Center, and domestic violence intensifies over time, and it appears in any racial, social, economic, and gender category. And the impact of domestic violence impacts not only the partner, but friends, family, and children. Now, therefore, the Mayor and Council of the City of Rockville do hereby proclaim October 2024 as National Domestic Violence Awareness Month and call upon everyone to speak out against domestic violence, to support organizations that assist domestic violence victims in our community, and to help victims of these crimes find the assistance and healing that they need by sharing the 24-hour hotline. That number is 1-800-799-SAFE. Again, 1-800-799-7233. And the TTY number is 1-800-787-3224. Please write it down and share it. I would like to welcome Judith Clark. She is the CEO of Women Who Cares Ministries. On an annual basis, she has an awareness event that's coming up, and I hope she'll say a few words about that, but there are ways that you can get involved to help. And I want to thank you for supporting those who have been impacted by domestic violence and raising awareness in our community, our city, and our county. All right, I'm going to ask that. Thank you. Do we have a second? Second. Councilmember Jackson is second. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Welcome, Judith. Okay.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Judith Clark, CEO and founder of Women Who Care Ministries, and I send you greetings on behalf of Women Who Care Ministries. Domestic violence is indeed no respecter of persons. It just sneaks up like a thief in the night, wreaking havoc wherever it goes, not just to the victim directly, but to the family, the friends, the coworkers, people near and far who hear about such horrific situations. And that's why for more than 23 years, Women Who Care Ministries has been committed to helping hurting people heal through food services, and particularly through making sure that women, men, and children are no longer victims of domestic violence, but that they can move towards survivorship, not to just be able to get out of these situations, but to get out of and stay out. And so that takes tools. It takes everyone at the table to help make this happen. You know, the preventative and restorative services that we serve is not just in Rockville, but all of the county and beyond. So because Rockville, City of Rockville, has this shared vision of public safety, we're honored also to have been partnered with them for over 15 years. Matter of fact, the event that Monique just spoke about, that Mayor Monique just spoke about, our Restore to Joy, this November 16th will be our 17th annual Restore the Joy Domestic Violence Empowerment Luncheon. And so we invite all of you here and listening to please attend. It's November 16th from 11 to 2. It's going to be a resource fair, speakers. There's going to be people who are overcoming domestic violence, but also people that aren't, to give them our support. Again, we need everybody at the table to heal this societal ill. So I just want to thank you, City of Rockville, Mayor and Council member, for all of your long-standing support. And it's because of the support that our agency gets that helps us to reach out. And so it's the support that we all give to people who are suffering in this area that gives them the courage to come forward and say, I do not deserve to be abused. And we have the tools to give them to make sure that that doesn't happen. Thank you.
So as many of you may have heard, recently Rockville was named by Wallet Hub as the top and best small city in Maryland. Now there are many, many reasons for that, but I believe one of those reasons is community planning and organizing, whether it's historic districts, and I know we have Commissioner Powell here from the Historic District Commission, whether it's dealing with all the things that come forth for zoning and planning. I know we have Commissioner Pittman here. It's critical, and we have amazing volunteers on our boards and commissions that are working for it. So I am proud to be able to talk about Community Planning Month in the city of Rockville, because we take pride in community planning here. Whereas change is constant and affects all cities, towns, suburbs, counties, boroughs, townships, rural areas, and other places. And community planning and plans can help manage this change in a way that provides better choices for how people work and live. And whereas community planning provides an opportunity for all residents to be meaningfully involved in making choices that determine the future of their community. And whereas the full benefits of planning require public officials and citizens who understand, support, and demand excellence in planning and plan implementation. And now, therefore, the Mayor and Council of Rockville, Maryland, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2024 as Community Planning Month in the city of Rockville, Maryland, in conjunction with the celebration of National Community Planning Month throughout the country. Madam Mayor, I move the proclamation.
Councilmember Shaw seconds. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye. And now, Commissioner Pittman, would you like to come up and accept the proclamation and say a few words?
Madam Mayor and council members, on behalf of the Planning Commission, thank you for recognizing the value of community planning. Thoughtful, collaboratively created policies lift up communities and make all of our lives better. This is especially true of community planning. Thank you for creating the conditions for the excellent planning process that makes Rockville thrive, and a special thank you to the planning staff who supports all that we do.
Take a picture.
Good evening. How are y'all doing? Awesome. Good to be here. I'm actually thankful to my colleague, Councilmember Valeri, for allowing me to steal a little bit of her thunder in talking about Bullying Prevention Month. It's not something that immediately comes to mind, something that I know a number of us growing up kind of dealt with. We thought it was kind of a rite of passage to kind of get picked on. And I'll be honest, I was one of those who kind of stood by the side and laughed and carried on. And I regret it now. I am humbled. I am thankful that my own child, Montgomery County Public School attendee, they receive active instruction even from the early years about bullying and how to deal with it. And more importantly, how to be an active bystander. So if you see something, as they say in New York, say something. Many people who get picked on aren't in positions to stand up for themselves. And sometimes you just got to stand up to a bully or help somebody stand up to them. So it's incumbent upon us, even as adults, because we recognize it in our workplaces, in our homes, even unfortunately in government, where folks look down and pick on others. So with that, I'll shut up and go ahead and read the proclamation. Whereas bullying is the most common form of violence in our society. More than 70% of young people nationwide say that they have seen bullying in their schools. 30% have admitted to bullying others. Membership in either the bully or the victim group is closely associated with dropping out of school, poor school development, criminal activity, or other negative long-term consequences. And whereas bullying at school, cyberbullying, and bullying in group settings have been on the rise in many organizations, school districts, community centers, educators, and parents have publicly expressed concern about the bullying of children. And now, therefore, the Mayor and Council of the City of Rockville, Maryland, do hereby proclaim October 2024 as National Bullying Prevention Month and ask that everyone be models for children and adults to help combat bullying behavior through kindness, empathy, and compassion towards others. With that, Madam Mayor, I move the proclamation.
Thank you. It's been seconded by Councilmember Valeri. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye. And do we have, I think, some high school students? Awesome. Thank you. Oh, don't give me detention for not standing up for folk. My mom will get on my case. Would y'all like to say a few words? Cool, thank you.
I am so thankful to accept this proclamation on behalf of Richard Montgomery High School. This proclamation speaks to the important work that we do in schools to, with the community, raise children who know how to treat each other with respect and kindness, which is truly the most important thing that we teach children at school. I would say more important even than math or science or English. So thank you very much to the City of Rockville for creating this proclamation to recognize this important part of our work, and specifically for asking us as representatives of our schools and that important work that we do to be here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Doug Nelson. I'm principal at Wooten High School, and thank you to the council and to the mayor for having us here this afternoon. I stand really proudly with my fellow principals because bullying is a big thing. We face this in our schools, and we see firsthand the impact that bullying behavior can have on our students. And what I would really like to amplify here at the podium is that it really comes down to belonging for our kids. When we have these behaviors, our students do not then fully get to access their learning space, and that school is built for them. And so I, of course, stand with my fellow principals here against bullying and recognize how important it is that we do that in a space like this. I would also like to take the opportunity to thank everyone here because I remember my bullies from high school. I confronted them. And while that was challenging to know that I went into a space that sometimes I felt targeted or people came to capitalize on characteristics that I could not necessarily change about myself, what I remember more are the teachers and the administrators who had my back, who stood with me, even though that was a dynamic that I faced. And it became a very motivating factor for me as an administrator that I still walk through the doors of my school to this day to stand with students and know that I have their back. So thank you very much. We really do appreciate it. Rashonda?
Good evening. My name is Rashonda Piles, and I'm the proud principal of Rockville High School. I'd like to take the time to express my sincere gratitude to Madam Mayor and the Rockville City Council for the presentation of this proclamation honoring Rockville High School, Wooten High School, and Richard Montgomery High School in our efforts in combating bullying. Like they said, we deal with this day in and day out, and we are strong. We stand strong. This recognition not only validates the hard work and dedication of our students and staff, but also emphasizes the importance of creating a safe and inclusive environments for all young people in our school's community. Your support serves as a powerful reminder that we are not alone in this fight and that together we can make a significant impact. I am truly grateful. We are truly grateful for your commitment to this important issue and for encouraging our schools to continue their efforts. Your leadership inspires us to keep pushing for a culture of respect and kindness. Thank you again for this honor. We look forward to continuing our work together to foster a safe and welcoming community for everyone. So thank you. Thank you.
For each of you.
Thank you. Thanks again.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm gonna go down this way. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you.
The next proclamation is distinctly my honor. And actually, this is the first time I've been able to do this since being elected. Prior to being elected, I co-founded the Rockville Pedestrian Advocacy Committee. In part, I did this in honor of a neighbor and resident who was killed crossing her residential street in Twinbrook. But once I got started doing the work, there's a lot of joy and positivity in making walking more exciting, more fun, and ultimately more safe. So this is a very special honor for me. Whereas the state of Maryland was the first state in the country to designate walking as the official exercise in 2008, and whereas Governor Wes Moore designated the month of October as Walktober in Maryland by recognizing the state's official exercise, walking, for its health benefits and well-being for all Marylanders. And now, therefore, that the Mayor and Council hereby proclaim October 2024 as Walktober in the city of Rockville, Maryland, and invite all residents to take advantage of walking for its health, recreation, and transportation benefits, as well as Walktober walk-in-hours focused on pedestrian safety. The city encourages everyone to find time to walk or roll every day and to make it a priority for residents of all ages. Madam Mayor, I move the proclamation.
Councilmember Fulton seconds. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say
Aye. And I believe that we have the chair of the Rockville Pedestrian Advocacy Committee here to talk about. Come on up, Paula Hubble.
Good evening. I'm Paula Hubble. I'm the chair of the Rockville Pedestrian Advocacy Committee, also known as RPAC. And thank you to the mayor and council for this proclamation about walking. And I want to invite everyone on Tuesday the 29th, we'll be having a Walktober walk. We'll be starting at Croydon Park on East Rockville at 5:30, and we'll be ending at 6:30 at City Hall for a vigil. So we hope that you all can join us. Thank you.
I wanted to thank my colleagues for raising awareness about some very important issues through our proclamations and recognitions. And I want to thank those who came to speak out from the community to accept the proclamations and recognitions. I particularly wanted to just say it is such an amazing thing to see all three principals standing together. And you are creating great humans in our community, so thank you. I heard some themes, and I'll just speak out of turn just briefly on respect, kindness, good over evil, and spreading light through many of our proclamations and speaking up. And so I know it's not an official statement, but wanted to just note today is October 7th. It was a tragic day with the Hamas terrorist attack. I know some of my colleagues will say some things later. But it's caused a lot of hurt, humanitarian crisis overseas. But I wanted to acknowledge our teachers are actually dealing with this, our principals, in terms of fighting hate in our own community. And so I wanted to say thank you. We have to continue to speak out against Islamophobia. We must continue to speak out against anti-Semitism, as well as all forms of hate in our community. So thank you for the work that you're doing on the front lines every day in our community. There are two additional proclamations for the month of October, Ageism Awareness Month, as well as LGBTQ History Month. I want to thank my colleagues, Councilmember Shaw, as well as Councilmember Jackson, for bringing these forward. These will be on our website tomorrow. I also want to know that we are trying something new here with all of our proclamations in the beginning in an effort to try to make our meetings a little bit more brisk and end at an earlier time. And we will take a break now and reconvene at about 6:30 p.m. for those who are watching online. Thank you all. Good evening, Rockville. Welcome back. Today is still October 7th, 2024. We're going to reconvene meeting 24-24. The next agenda item is agenda review.
Madam Mayor and council members, there was one change to the agenda for this evening. We added the appointment for the Financial Advisory Board member.
Thank you very much. And now we'll have the city manager's report.
Mayor Asham, members of City Council, good evening. 3 really quick announcements. On September 22nd, Rockville celebrated Peace Day. This event included the dedication of the Little Labyrinth and the new Flame of Hope at Maddie Stepanek Park, and we just hope that folks in the community enjoy those new amenities. Go out and check them out. Also, our emergency management and wellness teams want to make sure everyone is aware that free COVID-19 tests are available through the U.S. Postal Service. Again, up to 4 tests per household can be ordered at covidtest.gov. Then finally, responses to the 2024 community survey are beginning to stream in. Residents from 3,000 randomly selected Rockville households who receive the green postcard may still respond online, or they can use the mailed paper version of the survey and the postage paid envelope. Surveys must be returned no later than Monday, November 4th. We really appreciate everybody who participates. The results will be used to identify areas for improvement in order to make Rockville a best practice community. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. And just one other announcement, as mentioned earlier, Rockville was named the top city in Maryland, small city in Maryland. We're very excited about that. Looked at economic health and a number of other factors, safety. Of course, there's more that we need to do to make our city even better, but we're super excited to get that acknowledgement. Councilman Van Grack.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I know you mentioned it earlier, but I think it's important to note that today does mark the 1 year since Hamas terrorists orchestrated an unconscionable attack on Israel, resulting in the single deadliest attack on Jews since the Holocaust. More than 1,200 men, women, and children were brutally murdered. Many victims were raped, and over 250 were taken hostage, 35 of whom we have known to be killed, while 101 of them, including 7 Americans, remain unaccounted for. On this solemn anniversary of the October 7th terrorist attack, we pause to remember the lives tragically lost and the hostages still being held by the terrorist organization Hamas. Let us also be reminded of our shared responsibility to foster understanding and cooperation so that we can work towards a future where such tragedies never happen again. And importantly, we must remain committed to combating the disturbing rise in volume and frequency of the threats against the Jewish community as well as the Muslim, Arab, Israeli, and Palestinian communities that we have seen in the wake of last year's attack. I am extremely thankful that this esteemed body, the Mayor and Council of Rockville, has issued multiple statements condemning these hateful attacks, not only here in Rockville, but nationwide. Today and every day, we must remain committed to ensuring that Jews, Muslims, Arabs, Israelis, and Palestinians in our city, our community, and our country feel safe and are protected. No person and no community should have to live in fear of hate-fueled violence. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Valeri.
I'd like to follow up on my colleague's very poignant remarks with a heartfelt, sincere wish for peace. As noted, we recently had the Peace Festival, and there is no more important than now to focus on peace. And as someone mentioned during the festival, peace has a wonderful trickle-down effect and can be felt by everyone. Currently, there are many Lebanese civilians who are caught in the midst of this current phase of the crisis. And I think it's worthwhile to note that Lebanon has the second largest Christian population in the Middle East after Cyprus, which is number one. I hope that, sincerely, I hope that we can all join together and hope for peace in the coming days and weeks ahead. On a lighter note, much lighter note, getting many reports from residents that they're seeing the spotted lanternfly. And just as a reminder, if you see them, stomp on them. They are invasive, they are destructive, and anything that we can do, even, I know I just talked about peace and I'm talking about stomping on lanternflies, but they're extremely destructive to the environment. So I just wanted to put a plug in for stomping them.
Thank you to our city manager. Thank you, Ms. Taylor-Farrell, on the agenda review. We recognize many important proclamations, recognitions, and spoke about peace, light, and I just wanted to encourage our folks in this community to continue to be compassionate for each other. We can't control everything in the world. We can control how we behave and react and support one another. We're now going to move to boards and commissions appointment and reappointments. The first one is for the Financial Advisory Board this time, and then we'll also have future appointments at the following meeting. Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to make a motion to move William Mako to a new appointment to serve a 3-year term on the Financial Advisory Board until October 1st, 2027.
Thank you. Councilmember Shaw seconds. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
It is unanimous. Thank you. We'll now move to community forum. This is the time to hear from our community. We ask that everyone speak in a civil and courteous manner, respecting others, and each person will be allowed 3 minutes. We ask that you stick to the 3 minutes allowed. There will be a time clock in front of you so that you can see when your time has expired. There will also be an audible beep at the end of the 3 minutes. Please state your name and whether you live within the city of Rockville for the record. The first person is Jake Jacobek. Welcome.
Good evening. May I have 5 since I'm speaking as chair?
During
So does
community
everyone-
forum. No,
Okay.
but if you send us comments, we'll all look at them.
Okay, understood. Okay, then I will make sure to be concise. My name is Jake Jacobek. I'm the chair of the Rockville Bicycle Advisory Committee, and I live here in the city of Rockville. And I'm coming here to speak on the council's state legislative priorities discussion later on. Specifically to the issue of contributory negligence. The state of Maryland is only one of 4 states in the union that practices this type of law for adjudicating crashes. Under contributory negligence, if someone bringing a personal injury lawsuit is found to be in any way liable for the incident or whatever happened, they cannot recover any damages from another at-fault party, even if the claimant is only deemed 1% at fault, and the other person is, born to bear 99% of the blame. The claimant is not entitled to any compensation. This is true everywhere, even when injuries are suffered by one party, which is often the case when a motorist collides with a bicyclist or somebody walking. For instance, if a taillight of a bicycle runs out of battery and the person bicycling is hit by a texting driver, the cyclist would not be able to claim any damages. Similarly, if a person walking on the edge of the street that doesn't have a sidewalk and shoulder and a right-turning driver crashes into them, the person could not recover medical costs. This is an unjust practice for everybody on the road, including all of us who use them. The Rockville Bicycle Advisory Committee think that the law should be revoked. One RBAC volunteer was a juror in a civil lawsuit and has had first experience with how this has been applied. They served on a jury where a person driving a car hit someone crossing the street on foot. The person lost the case because she was wearing all black and using an umbrella while crossing the street in the rain. This also happened to be at a poorly designed crossing without a pedestrian signal. The person driving had to ease out to the middle of the road to see around a curve. The driver pulled out and luckily stopped, but only after knocking the person to the ground. The jury wanted to provide compensation to help pay the doctor bills incurred by the person walking. However, they received nothing because of this law. As an interesting incident in local area, DC has made a difference in this respect because it's obviously been very difficult to completely repeal this. In DC, they have made a carve-out for people walking or cycling or rolling or whichever, basically vulnerable road users, where the vulnerable road users will be treated under a comparative negligence standard. So that now they can actually claim damages as opposed to the opposite. I feel that the state would, people, state legislators and our colleagues up in Annapolis would be more receptive to working on this limited sort of scope, and it might be more realistic to pass it in the legislative house. So I urge you to consider this in your legislative priorities and request that to Annapolis when the time comes. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else in the room who would like to speak? Okay. We'll now move to our virtual speaker, Mr. John Becker.
Hear me now?
We can hear you.
Thank you very much for allowing me to speak tonight. Outpatient recovery chair, so if my voice is muffled, I apologize. And because of that, I will be brief. Once again, I'm asking for mayor and council to provide an update and a schedule for when there will be a town hall for town center and town square in Rockville Pike. Those of us who live in this area, those businesses and homeowners, we are requesting an update as far as the activities, what is going on. And this does not include the town center master plan. This includes the day-to-day and just exactly all these different parties that are participating in town center, what is going on. In addition, on tonight's agenda, there is a mention of speed cameras and the problems with the state of Maryland in obtaining them. And I do want to point out, as I have previously, East Jefferson Street and Veers Mill and Rockville Pike, that border town center, are subjected to speeding day in and day out, especially late in the evenings and sometimes early in the mornings and occasionally throughout the day. And I would like to have this put on the agenda for discussion by mayor and council and staff and police to ensure that we get these cameras installed on Rockville Pike, East Jefferson, and Veers Mill along those areas that border town center. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That exhausts the list of those who have signed up in advance. Just a last chance if anyone wants to speak. Okay, thank you. We now have a consent agenda, item number 9. There are several items. 9A, award and authorize the city manager to execute a rider agreement with City Proof Corporation, Simpson Unlimited, and C, Dynamic General Contracting, LLC, for 1 year, 4 optional 1-year renewal periods, and the amount not to exceed $4.5 million annually for these 3 agreements. B, award and authorize the city manager to execute a rider contract to ride Montgomery County Contract number 1143252 for underground stormwater facility maintenance and repair services to Magnolia Plumbing for a term through November 1st, 2024, with 2 1-year extension options and an amount not to exceed $435,000 annually. authorization for the city manager to approve a grant of storm drain easement on parcel C, Rockshire Village Center, and the approval of minutes. Before we take these, I just wanted to note that I had one thing I wanted to raise about A and B, and then if my colleagues would be open to considering. I want to thank the city manager for providing responses to my questions on A and B. Previously, we've discussed that when we are writing contracts or have major contracts, that we can still include language that says we are encouraging subcontractors to include or consider minority, female, and disabled veteran organizations and companies. So I just wanted to see, before we approve these major amounts, if that could be added so we can approve tonight with that condition.
We
Mr. Malik.
we can add that.
Okay.
Thank you.
So if we make a motion, if we could just note with the condition of including the MFTV language. Okay. Councilman Van Grack, go ahead.
Just a question regarding C. As I was reading through it this past week, and I apologize I didn't get ahead. I know this, my understanding is this is a agreement between the owner of the project plan, not any other Rockshire community, and the city with regarding granting the rights to the easement. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Has the city staff just made sure, because of the angle and the position of this particular easement, whether there would be any potential negative effects on any of the neighboring communities with this area, because it's right on the corner of the other neighboring communities, which are part of the Rockshire Homeowners Association?
We did take a look at it. We don't think there'll be any ill effects from that.
Okay. All right.
Colleagues, any other questions? Okay. If we can move forward with a motion for all 9A, B, C, and D with the conditions I mentioned on MFTV. Who would like to make the motion? Dr. Miles.
So moved.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Councilmember Jackson seconds. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. All right. It is unanimous. Thank you. We now welcome the Financial Advisory Board. They'll be presenting their FY24 annual report as well as their FY25 action plan. I also want to welcome Mr. Bob Wright, who chairs the Financial Advisory Board, as well as our staff liaison, Xiaojing Zhang. Welcome.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. I am Bob Wright, Chair of the Financial Advisory Board. I'm pleased the following board member is here with me tonight, and that is Ms. Diane Gould. The detailed FY 2024 annual report and the proposed FY 2025 action plan are in your briefing materials. Obviously, there is much more content in those, and if you haven't read it and are seeking some information, please read it. What tonight's presentation then offers is your opportunity to ask questions and seek clarification. At the end of the presentation, the board asks you to support our proposed FY 2025 action plan. Next slide, please. Administration. Recall that the content of this presentation is for FY 2024. That ended in June of 30th. So we're 3 months later. There is one time at the end of this, I will give an update. During FY 2024, Mr. McRitchie ended his second term, didn't want to seek reappointment, so he said he would continue to serve until he was replaced, and he was replaced, we thank you for that, by Mr. Patrick, Michael Patrick. Ms. Zhang, who is our staff liaison, is outstanding in taking minutes, posting agendas, arranging virtual meetings, and interfacing between the board and city staff. Councilmember Jackson is our new council liaison. We welcome him. He comes with enthusiasm, a desire to serve and help, and we greatly appreciate that. Thank you. And now for the update. In July, David Mack resigned. So that comes after the fiscal year. And so there was a vacancy. And I want to thank you this evening for making the appointment of Mr. William Mako. I want to thank the mayor for her aggressive pursuit of finding a member to put on the board or to appoint to the board, and we greatly appreciate that. Next slide, please. Compliance. Items 1 through 7 are required. In some instances, the requirement is based on a Maryland statute. For example, the Open Meetings Act, which requires public notice. In other instances, the requirement is based on the city code. For example, meet in City Hall at least once every quarter. Items 8, 9, and 10 are good governance practices that we try to follow because it makes for a more effective board. Next slide, please. Board meetings. The board has no set meeting schedule. We meet according to our workload, which means that sometimes there may be 2 months where we don't meet, and there may be a time in 1 month where we meet twice, possibly even 3 times. We did meet 10 times in FY 2024. We meet more frequently in the 3rd fiscal quarter, as that is when the proposed budget comes out. And when we're reviewing that budget, it's an intensive work for the board, and it's our most labor-intensive area because we're reviewing the operating budget and the CIP. And in the 4th fiscal quarter, we spend time preparing our annual report and developing a proposed action plan for the coming fiscal year. Next slide, please. FY 2024 outcomes. It's always good news that there were no material findings in our actions 1 through 6. Action 8, which was annual department performance measure review, is subsumed into Action 6. Action 9, King Farm Farmstead and Redgate Park were concluded. We do have a recommendation, and that recommendation is to establish an independent internal audit function. This is suggested or recommended in GFOA. It's a best-in-class service. If you read the annual report and you look at the first paragraph, it gives more detail about why we feel this way. Now, GFAOA does realize that many municipalities will not choose this route, or it obviously comes at a cost, obviously a personnel cost, and that's that. But what the board felt was the mayor and council ought to be aware they have an opportunity, if they so desire, to bear the cost to have a best-in-class audit function. Now, GFOA also offers a process, if you don't take that route, to do internal audits, and that is the practice the city currently follows. We have no critique of that practice. It's done excellently. In fact, they every year have a $30,000 budget that can be used if you need to hire an external independent auditor with some special expertise to come in. That hasn't happened. The city has actually run very well, so we haven't had the opportunity to do that. But just the board, again, wanted you to be aware that you could have a best-in-class practice. We forwarded 5 memorandums. One of those was last year's FY annual report and an action plan. We did review the procurement report. We sent the mayor and council a memo on that. There was a review of the investment policy, and we sent a memo to Ms. Stacy Webster saying we concurred in it. Mr. Craig Simoneau, who was the acting city manager at the time, and Mr. David Gottesman, the assistant city manager, received a memo on the review of performance measures. And the last one to the mayor and council were financial questions to include in the next Rockville Community Survey. Next slide, please. That's the end of the words I'd like to say about the annual report, so I want to turn your attention to the proposed FY 2025 action plan. Of course, there are the 6 actions required by the charter. 2 actions were completed, and we've added 1 action, which is key performance indicators. That's action 11, and when we get to that point, you'll learn more about it. The following slides have a lot of busy words. I don't intend to read it to you. I'm sure you've looked at it and wondered, but we don't know what else to do but to put in what we have. What I intend to do is for each of the actions is to say a few key words to give you a focus of what they are about. Next slide, please. Action 1, review the annual comprehensive financial report, the single audit report, and the popular annual financial report. Of course, the annual comprehensive financial report is extensive and all-inclusive. Some people might even say it's boring to read, but it's an important document and a lot of material there. However, the PAFR, which the city has instituted, is very lucid with graphics and charts. If anybody hasn't read it, I highly recommend it. Any resident in Rockville can read it. It's really great reading. You see it visually, where our revenue comes from and how it's spent, and other things about Rockville. So I would encourage, if any council members haven't read it, to please read it, and any resident that's listening to please read it. Action 2, review the financial management policies. The board did an extensive review in both FY 2022 and FY 2023, and last year in FY 2024. And we believe we couldn't do more in terms of an extensive review, so our only action for the coming year would be if there are amendments or new policies instituted. Next slide, please. Action 3, review the city's investment policy. To ensure compliance with Maryland law, a comprehensive review of the city's investment policy was performed by PFM Asset Management, the city's investment advisor. And it was, as I said, performed in FY 2024. The board concurred in that review, and we sent a memo to Ms. Webster saying that we did so. We don't anticipate any amendments to the investment policy in FY 2025. Action 4, review the city's cash and investment report. The major focus is that the investment report, which is prepared by PFM Asset Management, is done, it's performed promptly and posted. Next slide, please. Action 5, review the city's quarterly financial reports. Again, we review them, and if we see any anomalies, we obviously identify them. But again, the important point is that they are published in a prompt manner and posted. Action 6, review next year's operating and capital budgets. Board questions and comments and staff's responses are all channeled via the staff liaison, that's Ms. Sang. All those emails are kept and eventually chronicled, and so we have a multi-page, maybe reaching 100, of all the email exchanges that went on in that particular review. That serves two purposes. It's if after the reviews there are some questions, we can go back and review it, and if there are citizens or residents, rather, that are interested in what the review looks like and whatnot, they can ask for that document by contacting Ms. Sang. Again, we will review selected performance measures in support of the Mayor and Council's 8 critical success factors in this review. And we plan to also look at financial success or performance measures in that. Next slide, please. Action 7, remaining Calyptus recommendations. There are 2 unresolved Calyptus recommendations that are now tracked in the procurement annual report. The Calyptus report came out in 2015, almost 9 years ago now, 10 years ago. It's a long time, but there were 2 unresolved issues that were never implemented, 2 recommendations that were never implemented. And those are a procurement strategic plan and a procurement strategic sourcing plan. We realize there are some challenges that seem to have come up that have prevented them from being developed, but we certainly believe very strongly that they should be finalized, made final. The other thing I'd like to say is I think the procurement annual report, which we did write a memo on last year, is becoming an exceedingly important document. Obviously, first and foremost, how well we spend our taxpayer dollars is in there. There are the two unresolved Calyptus recommendations that I just discussed. And are minority, female, disabled, or veterans-owned businesses receiving awards also is part of that. Sometimes they keep it as a separate document, okay? And finally, as I understand it, what is the impact of raising the threshold for contracts approved by the mayor and council from $100,000 to $250,000? So I just want to highlight that the procurement annual report, I think, is taking on a significant importance. Next slide, please. Action 8, our community survey. The community survey offers the opportunity to receive feedback from residents regarding the perception of how well the city is doing in certain areas. The board obviously believes that one of those areas should be finance and stewardship. The board did forward 4 financial questions to be included in the community survey. We reported it to mayor and council. However, said all that, we are disappointed that we were not engaged during the development of the current survey. We obviously don't know whether one or more of our questions were included. We have questions regarding how the random sample is constructed. We have questions regarding the format of the response, whether it should be forced choice or have 5 possibilities. And we have questions regarding the study methodology. And we think we could have been helpful in having that discussion with the city. We would appreciate, obviously, receiving a copy of the final survey. We know it's out. The 3,000 people have been asked. And we hope you have a good return rate. And that's always a challenge. But we would appreciate receiving first a copy of the survey itself and then the actual results. Next slide, please. Action 9, grant processes. In FY24, we reviewed ready grant processes and found them well formulated and executed. We reviewed caregiver grants, which we believe are well formulated and executed. Community grants, not so much. We were looking forward to sorting out this year, but as we understand it today, there is a new community services and enrichment grant program that supersedes the community grants program. We've initiated contact on that already, and we hope that when we're finished with that review, it meets the status of the ready grants and the caregiver grants. Next slide, please. Action 10, review sources, revenue sources. Staff continually looks at these sources to make sure that they isn't another possible source of revenue, and also if the source itself has been updated to reflect increases in price, otherwise inflation. And I believe they do a good job of that. However, we believe a comparative analysis of revenue sources in other jurisdictions might be beneficial, just to make sure there's something that Rockville hasn't overlooked. Next slide, please. Action 11. This is the new action that we've added, key performance indicators. And I just want to pull out one. There are performance measurements in the budget. The staff puts them in. So there's the performance measure, and we might call that an indicator, and there's a target, a goal for it. And as an example, I want to take debt management policies and ratios. So what are they? They are debt per asset assessed valuation of equal to or less than 1%, debt per capita of equal to or less than $1,562, debt per capita as a percent of per capita income, less than equal to 2.5%, debt service as a percent of the operating budget, less than or equal to 15%, the amortization rate for 5 years greater or equal to 25%, and the amortization rate for 10 years greater or equal to 50%. A lot of detail there, but what we hope to do is look at all the performance measures, look at them from the viewpoint of being key performance indicators, and determine if there could be possibly more that should be included. Are the targets appropriate? I read some targets. Staff has met them every year. I've been on the board, I don't know, 6 years now, and they continue to meet them, and that's good news. What I think the board wants to do is to understand where the targets came from. Are they appropriate? And we certainly want to do that. We also want to look at what the trends are. Sometimes the trends are reported from year to year in the budget, but at other times it's just a performance measure and the staff met it. We think trends can be predictive of future issues, and so we want to understand what those are. And the other question we have is, do other municipalities in Maryland, like Rockville, have key performance indicators? So that's why we're proposing to add it. Next slide and the last slide, okay, is we request that you accept the FY 2024 annual report and approve the proposed FY 2025 action plan. We hope you would support our activities 7 through 11. Thank you.
Just want to say thank you to the Financial Advisory Board. I know each of us feels very appreciative of all the volunteer hours you put in. I'll just note 2 things. One is Rockville continues to be, and this year got the AAA bond rating again. I think it's an extreme partnership between our city manager, our staff who are watching this, the Financial Advisory Board, and Mayor and Council to make this happen. It's the highest rating that a city can receive, and I want to thank the entire team for that. And since you mentioned some things related to procurement, I just want to make one comment that November 14th is an opportunity for businesses that are interested in doing business with the city to join at Glenview Mansion from 9 to noon. Rockville means business, so please feel free to come out for that important event. Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor. So as the liaison to the Financial Advisory Board, let me just say that they do a great job. Their dedication, hard work, the entire board, but especially Chairman Wright, is just fantastic. I've been now sitting on this board for almost a year now, and it's really astounding how you come prepared. You have various things you're looking at, and then you come in here and have this annual report and proposed action plan. It's a fantastic volunteer engagement, and it's a great thing that we have a board like the Financial Advisory Board to advise us and the city staff. And I would be remiss not to say thank you to the city staff, both for staffing the committee, but also for the cooperation you give to the board as they do their work. So I just want to thank you, Bob, for your hard work, and the rest of the board. It's really appreciated, and it's really a great work. Thank you.
Well, on behalf of the board, I'd like to thank you for those comments.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, any other questions? Councilmember Valeri and Dr. Miles. Dr. Miles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to echo the thanks of my colleagues to you, to our liaison, for all your work. I did read through the reports as I do in years past, and I know there was concern about some of the, I guess, reporting with regard to procurement strategic plan. It's my understanding that staff is working on that, as you correctly pointed out, and look forward to seeing what it looks like in the end. So thank you all.
Thank you, Councilmember Valeri.
So I have 2 questions. One is for Chair Wright, Chair Dr. Wright. It's really complicated when there's more than one thing. And then one question is for the city attorney. For yourself, can you share, is there a member of the FAB with a background in the particular financial needs of nonprofits?
Financial needs of nonprofits. I personally can't answer that question, so I wouldn't want to mislead you.
Sure.
We have a lot of background. I would think that someone has nonprofit. I know I'm going to speak if you would consider a church as a nonprofit, okay? Oh, yeah. I certainly perform the audit function every year for the church that I belong to, and Ms. Merle is the treasurer of the church and does all the books, does an outstanding job. She also works for Westat and is familiar with, obviously, surveys that they do for drugs that they want to get approved. So she's quite clear with that. But and Westat, might be a nonprofit. I don't know about that.
No, I appreciate that. And I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I was just trying to get a sense, 'cause in reviewing the charter, there's definitely some prescribed, there should be one person that has this experience and so forth. And I know nonprofit's not in the code, in the charter rather. For Mr. City Attorney, did you have the opportunity to review the proposed actions from the FAB to ensure that they fall within their charter described duties and responsibilities?
Well, actually, it's in the ordinance, not the charter, and I haven't had an opportunity, but I'll check with my staff. Is there a particular question that you have?
Well, no, if I recall correctly, their duties and responsibilities are outlined in the charter. It's section 2-241 from the charter.
So
you can come back with
but
that, which is
there a
totally
que-
fine.
Is there a question that I could get
I
back
have
with you?
a couple of questions about the proposed action items and whether or not they actually fall within the jurisdiction of the FAB.
Okay.
I mean, I can bring them if I can share them now, or we can have a further discussion on it. But that's kind of why I was wondering if you were able to look at the proposed actions, ensuring that it was within their purview.
So
It's totally okay. You can come back.
May I attempt to answer
Of course,
that question?
of course.
Okay. So some of the actions, let's take the Calyptus report. The report's done. There are a number of recommendations, many of them dealing with finance. And Mayor and Council have decided that the board should take that on as an action. I don't know how reviewing the charter, or not the charter, the code, would do that, because you won't find that in the code, okay? But what previous mayor and councils have done have taken the Calyptus report and said, we want you to follow that. I'd have to go back and think I'm just sort of stuck here. But there are other actions. 2 years ago, Mr. Pashala wanted the board to look at a way that the budget might show or portray the potential funding beyond the 5 years that typically is in the budget. And so that's a question or a case where I don't know that it's in the code or but it's what the council wanted to do. And so we did that. And he also added another one, which was, were there any other ways that we could accelerate some of those far out activities into the current 5-year CIP? So in those particular cases, it was actually mayor and council who said, we would like you to do this, and that's how they got added beyond the 6, all right? The other is we look at areas and make proposals. So mayor and council didn't direct us to look at key performance indicators. We looked at the budget, and we think it's really a good opportunity to do some comparisons. So.
Madam Mayor, if I may. Please proceed. No, and you're correct. There's actually two parts of the section 2-241 duties and responsibilities that kind of provide that as may be requested by mayor and council. So it's the beyond, right, or any other matter as requested by mayor and council. It's the directive, right? So that's why I was kind of trying to get to this body, this mayor and council. If there is anything outside of the explicitly stated duties and responsibilities, would have to be directed from us. And that's, I guess, the gist of my question. And I realize I'm throwing this out there, and I'd be happy if it wants to that answer to come back. I'm totally open to that, but I'm just kind of curious, again, recognizing that there's a framework here, and if we didn't propose, let's use the KPIs, if we didn't propose it and that's not explicit, where is it falling under duties and responsibilities? That sort of clarity would be really helpful for me. if that makes sense. And your colleague behind you is raising his hand.
I wanted to just
too.
share one thing that the mayor and council has done in previous years. Obviously, we can make decisions as a new body, but the mayor and council every year listens to the previous report and then agrees on what should be included in the upcoming focus areas. So it's a chance for this body to weigh in on what should be the area of focus, and that is before us this evening for consideration. Since I do look at some of the resumes, I wanted to just note, like Mr. Mako as an example, he has done budgeting and support for multinational organizations, as well as those organizations that relate to multinational nonprofits, et cetera. So there is a mix and diversity on the council in terms of their financial perspectives, and I appreciate the great depth that you bring to the city. I also just wanted to note just briefly that you asked a question about the survey. I took the time to look just briefly, and there were two pieces that you all had recommended that made it into the community survey revolving value for services for taxes based on how much we're all paying, as well as prioritizing spending on the needs. So I want to thank you for suggesting that did make it into the community survey.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Councilmember Van Grack.
First, and this is the easy part, I want to echo what my colleagues have said. Thank you and the whole board for the work that you do. I know hearing from Councilmember Jackson and hearing from some of you at events and reading your reports, the amount of work and effort that you all put together in reviewing everything and putting together these plans, and it's evident from your presentation. So thank you to you and thank you to staff for following up, because I know that staff's in on those meetings a lot. The only question I did have was with regard to action item number 9. And I know that you're talking about some of the grant processes that the city does. And you might recall, because I think even some members of the board were present during our work session when we were talking about grants, and the body itself talked about potential reforms and how we'd look at it. I'm wondering if, number one, I know you generally talked about that action item number 9 in your presentation. I'm wondering if you could provide a little bit more detail about what areas you're looking at. And then the second part of that is, assuming there is going to be some type of either report or consensus from the board, is that something that you're going to be providing to the mayor and council as we do reviews as well?
We could do it as a memorandum, and obviously would also appear in the annual report for the year. When we say that it's well formulated, it's clear that here's who qualifies for it, here's the purpose of the grant, here's how you apply for the grant, here's how the grant will be reviewed, all right, and possibly even who's going to do the review. And so that whole process, I think, helps people understand, and we believe helps residents understand it's really city money, it's taxpayer monies, and that we have a process that starts off with what it's about, who qualifies, what you have to do to get it, and at the very end, we believe that they all should have some kind of, I'll say, final report. Now, that report can be very brief, but do you get a grant and then you never report on it? That, to us, doesn't sound like an appropriate way. So we did that with Ready, and we did that with the caregivers. They all fulfilled that, what we thought was a valid process. We tried to do that with community grants, and it just wasn't fitting in. So we thought maybe there was something we didn't understand about it. Now, in the meantime, obviously, they are reorganizing in that. But again, the only thing that we want is it's taxpayer dollars. Therefore, if somebody's applying for it, it ought to be clear all along the way, and that there ought to be some kind of, when it's finished, some kind of feedback, some report. Doesn't have to be extensive. We're not talking about, do a 10-page report. I had a project. You could take a picture of the project and turn it in and say, here's what eventually result. But we think that should be a requirement. And I think sometimes that was not a requirement in the community grants.
Okay, so what you're essentially proposing is having the process, both the beginning and the end for community organization grants, closer to how we do the caregiver grants and money provided to Ready, and providing a more formulaic process, much like those other grant processes.
That's correct. I wish I could have said it that way.
Okay. All right, thank you. That answers my question perfectly. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. So I see that as in your action plan, and you're right, there is a revised community grants process. I know I've had some meetings with the city manager and appreciate he's trying to bring some similarity based on the feedback that you all have given, that there needs to be a process on the community organization grant side. So that is happening. The questions I have relate to the independent internal audit services. I wonder if staff could just share their opinion on that recommendation.
Thank you, Mayor. We appreciate the recommendation. It's true that is a best practice, but candidly, it's for much larger cities with much bigger budgets, much greater number of programs throughout the city. I think the process that we use right now, where we set aside $30,000 annually to do individual performance reviews, is a good one. Didn't know that before I got here, but when I saw that, I was pleased, because you can use that as a good tool. I think if we ever exhaust those resources and/or we have a significant demand for additional audits, then we could bring somebody on. But right now, I don't think that's the highest priority.
Thank you. And we do, for the record, for the public, we do have an audit process.
Correct.
That's right. Okay. I also just wanted to note, I was looking at the action plan, and this commission is fantastic and really being very clear about your report as well as the next action plan. My request is if we can make sure that the city website is updated with the past plans. I think we don't have from last year, so I just wanted to, so that the public can have access to those. I think it would be very helpful. So now that we have this report, we would like to get it online. I think your comments about, just for me, the areas, if the grant review is limited to just the setup and the eligibility, I don't have a challenge with that. I just want to make sure it's clear that the Financial Advisory Board is not selecting any of the grantees, because there's a very clear process for that. And there was a study that was done on that process some time ago that the staff is now implementing. So just wanted to clarify, as we look at that action item, what that would entail. Any other questions or comments from my colleagues? Okay. Any questions or comments from staff?
No comments, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay.
From my side.
So we, yes.
I just want to
Mr.
make
Dawson.
sure I have Councilmember Verlelli's question so that we can get back to her. So in section 2-241 of the city ordinance, it lays out the duties and responsibilities of the Financial Advisory Board. And what you'd like to know is their proposed action, does it fall within? And I believe the answer was it does, and for those that does not, that's why they're before the body to get the body's permission to do that part of the action plan.
No,
So I think
sorry.
that might be the answer, but is there something more you'd like?
If I may.
Councilman Valeri.
No, and thank you. You're right. I had clicked too quickly. It is in the code. I was just asking that because yes, there is that sort of like, as asked for by mayor and council, or seem to be the larger exceptions. So I was just trying to wrap my head around, okay, all your action items fall under here unless they're requested by mayor and council, not unless they're proposed by the FAB. That's my.
Well, I think how it's, since the inception, the FAB has come before the body with their action plan, and the mayor and council has voted whether or not to adopt the action plan.
I understand, and I can only speak from me being who I am and then being on this body, that I have a question regarding the duties and responsibilities. And again, if it's something that has to come back, I completely appreciate that. I just want to make sure that, and you are correct, it's not in the charter, it's in the code, but we do not have every commission that's in the code and defined. And so the purpose of that, to my understanding, is to be very clear as to what your duties and responsibilities are. So I just wanted to get a sense from you. And again, if this is a comeback, I'm totally open to that. I just, it was not clear to me when comparing the action items to the code that everything was falling under their purview.
Councilmember Jackson.
Thanks. So I just want to be clear, and so maybe you can provide some guidance, or you guys can. What do we need to do tonight? Accept the report, and then we can decide whether we want to approve the action plan or items in the action plan, but I'm just wondering what the next step is.
That's it.
Okay.
You got it.
All right, so do I need to make a motion to approve the report?
Yes, but let me just, can I ask one more
Okay,
sentence?
yeah.
Okay.
I just want to clarify.
So for the community survey, action number 8, the survey is out. So I'm assuming that you, at this point, want to just be able to see the results, the report of the results.
Right, well,
That relates to the
we
financial
hope that the
questions.
results are, next to what the questions were, that's all.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to clarify.
And we're really, I won't say we're interested in the whole survey, we're interested in ones we think that we would like to know how the residents feel, how we're handling the city's money. We think that's important, their perception.
Question is for staff, can we be able to share the results? I think it's question 10 that relates to those 2 specific items that the Financial Advisory Board asked about.
Of course.
Is that okay? All right. All right, so I just want to make sure that's clear. That's what the intent of question number 8 is. And then number 9, review of all city awarded grants. I just want to make sure that it's what we discussed this evening is the scope of it, not
That's it. As I said, we've had discussions with Freddie, we've had discussions with the caregiver people within the city, and what didn't sort of get settled was the community grants. So we thought we'd try and do that this year, and then it's been reorganized. So.
Excellent. And then in terms of the KPIs, our budget does include KPIs, which I really appreciate. In addition to the KPIs, they're actually moving to do more public reporting. So it's already been applied to Vision Zero and the Climate Action Plan. And then my understanding that more public posting will happen. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So then it should be fairly easy then for the Financial Advisory Board to be able to access that because it'll be online.
That's also correct.
Great.
Okay.
Is that good by you all?
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. With that said, I'm fine personally. If anyone has any other questions about this item, please raise your hand. Councilmember Valeri.
Super quickly, because there are a couple of things as far as approving the action plan. Do we need an action plan that more closely reflects the feedback from us so far? Or are we approving the proposed action plan with this language?
So I clarified that the scope would be what we discussed this evening, and so before they post it, they would just maybe modify it to more clearly, succinctly note what we discussed this evening. Is that good?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Councilmember Jackson, please move forward.
All right, we'll clear that up in a second, but let me just move to accept the 2024
FY24
report. So motion to approve. No.
He wants to take it separately.
Yeah, separately. Okay. Yeah. So well, I want to make sure I get it right. So this first motion is just a motion to accept the 2024 report.
Second.
Councilman Van Grack seconds. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Okay, accepted. Councilmember Jackson.
All right. So what is the posture here? Because we're not approving the action plan as is. So how do we modify it so that it reflects what this body has discussed?
Okay, Councilmember Fulton.
Just to maybe help, I think it would be, and maybe I'll just do it, I move that we approve the action plan as just presented in our packet with the clarifications discussed and addressed by the mayor.
Perfect.
Do you second?
Second.
All right, thank you both. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Thank you very, very much. We appreciate your time and all of your expertise.
Okay, thank you. We appreciate your support.
All right. We now move to agenda item 12A, which is a work session, the Emergency Management Overview. I'd like to welcome Dr. Mark Landau.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here with you tonight. I know I was a regular visitor during COVID. I'm happy that we're not having to do that anymore. And particularly to be a social scientist and be called doctor during COVID was not a good thing. So with this overview, what I really want to talk to you about tonight is the themes kind of being the roles and the role of the city, which is limited. The resources that we have dedicated to that, which is appropriately limited as well, and then sometimes the expectations that are often unbounded off of it. So I want to have some of those discussions, and I also don't want anything said tonight to be construed as an ask for more resources or anything of that nature. It's a session to become familiar with where we fit in the emergency management ecosystem as a city. So I have 12 content slides to try and set that stage for you. There's a lot on them. That's so that they can be used as a reference if needed in the future. For those of you that were not with us during COVID, by way of introduction, to at least give you just a brief background of myself, I know Mayor Ashton and Dr. Miles are extremely familiar with me after the many briefings. But for the newer members of the council, I am our first full-time emergency manager with the city. I've been here just over 5 years. I come to you tonight with 28 years of government experience across levels of government. 22 of those were in Frederick County, where the last position I held, among others, I retired as the Homeland Security Commander for the Sheriff's Office. There in Frederick County, law enforcement is a little bit different, as we don't have county police up there. So the law enforcement and is invested in the Sheriff's Office as full service. I am a pracademic. I've had a dual tracked career as I do things. I've taught in the University of Maryland system for 19 years, among other universities, teaching emergency management, have a PhD in emergency management. I write and publish and speak regularly. I have an area of knowledge. Emergency management is a broad spectrum of things. So I want to make it clear that my background's in emergency operations, preparedness, targeted violence and terrorism, prevention, and continuity of operations. That's really where my expertise and knowledge lies. I am a certified emergency manager by the International Association of Emergency Managers, and I still do a lot of things with the Department of Homeland Security, First Responder Resource Group, and some things law enforcement-wise with the Department of Justice. But I want to make it clear, just like Bubba Blue in Forrest Gump, where he said he knows everything about the shrimping business. I do not. There are things I know, and there is a limit to it. So I want to make sure that we do that. So I want to start with just talking about this position, and it was created in the FY20 budget. Been only populated by me. Originally, it was placed in the police department. Historically, it had been a collateral duty of a commander or a supervisor in the police department. It was moved to the city manager's office in September of 2022. Most of that was due to the experience of COVID. It was pretty clear that I needed to be hooked to the hip of the city manager, which I was during most of that. From a budgetary perspective, there's not been dedicated funding for the emergency management function. We had a one-time appropriation, which has been very critical from FY 2023, which provided funding for us to build a new continuity and emergency operations plans. Continuity plan is done, emergency operations plan is in process, as we'll talk about. There was additional funding in FY 2025 to support the maintenance of the Emergency Operations Center it was included as operating cost increases associated with the Taft Court project. There was also funding for the Emergency Operations Center that came both from the appropriation from the council and from a federal grant as a result of congressionally directed funding. I want to talk about the continuity of operations plan. There are really two foundational elements for government. And a lot of times, if those things are not done well and good, a lot of times we want to put the weather vane on top of the house, or we're putting curtains up and doing other things when we don't have a solid foundation. What we've done is post-COVID, this is the first piece that we've pushed forward that is really a huge leap for the city. In that plan identifies 97 essential functions that the city performs, and that's across all the departments, charter offices, and in city government. So it considers scenarios for loss of facilities, loss of systems, and loss of staff. So if we were to lose this building, we have a baseline understanding of what happens in this building. How do we pick up and do operations somewhere else? With that, we have that the courses of action. Either we have redundancy in place, totally relocate functions, distribute operations, virtual operations, devolution, which is where you would pass that off to another governmental entity, and then manual workarounds based upon what the scenario is. It was in a year-long process, over 100 meetings with department sub-functions about how business processes happen, how our hazards would intersect with those business processes, and then how we would work around them. What I want to move into is talking about this ecosystem and how we fit in as a city to a larger ecosystem. So basically, the national planning system begins with the federal government and the national response framework. Federal laws, authorities, and policies dovetail into state emergency operations plans, laws, and policies, which then dovetail to county emergency operations plans, laws, and policies, then down to us. What's important is that how we fit into the Montgomery County's emergency operations plan. This was revised and republished just recently in 2024. Generally, it's a 5-year cycle of operations. They're not as continuity of operations is much more sensitive and needs to be done on a more regular basis. But it's critical to note that for us as a city, we have not taken the legal responsibility for emergency management from the county. Okay, the county is the emergency management authority under state law. The director of the county Office of Emergency Management and Homeland Security is the governor's authorized representative in this area. The city does not have provisions in code or charter for any local disaster declarations, and we do have delineated responsibilities under the county emergency operations plan. I want to move into these 12 responsibilities, and this is where we talk about where we start, where the county ends, and where we start as far as our responsibilities. And these are the 12 functions, and I don't want to, 12 entities or 12 elements that we have that are our responsibility. And a lot of this, if you overlay it of our COVID-19 experience, it was a primarily county Department of HHS function, and we were in support. And during that, if you look at that first bullet, provide available staff, resources, and facilities to support emergency operations. Some of the key things that we did was make facilities available to our HHS partners to do things in the city. That included here in this parking lot was used for mobile testing here. And we also did that at the Civic Center, and then made our community centers available to them. There were clinics held in Lincoln Park and some others. So those are the type of things where we are a support to what's going on in the county. Another key function for us is doing damage assessment. You see that second bullet. There's a lot in here about damage assessment, and will be coordinated with the county's Department of Permitting Services. We also have one of our most critical functions, of course, is our water provision, our water plant. And with that, providing damage assessment of that. And then we also primarily are responsible for the removal and disposal of debris within the city. The next several, and moving on to the next slide, it starts into the public order functions with the police functions and maintaining law and order and the security of critical facilities. Moving on to the next slide, order and conduct evacuations as necessary, provide traffic and crowd control, appoint any disaster assistance representatives to the county afterwards, provide lists of our equipment that we have that can be provided, and then make those things available in emergency. And basically, those are the 12 items that are outlined that are city responsibilities down from the county, according to the county's emergency operations plan. Just to take a look at how the county emergency operations plan is organized, there's different ways of organizing emergency operations plans. One of the ways is to look at emergency support functions with a county as large as Montgomery with as many departmental functions that they have. They organize that into these emergency support functions, which then join together multiple county departments to perform that in an emergency. So for us, we are in the process of developing our emergency operations plan. We hope to have a draft in December. That has resulted in dozens of more meetings with departments, sub-functions, as we look at how we dovetail. When we talk about dovetailing those things, where do we kick off with those 12 things that we're responsible for as a city and make them happen and assure that they are assigned. So we will have that draft in December, hopefully, and then we will move on to having a tabletop exercise sometime in the January, February at this point time. And within that, we've made sure to specify a role for the JEDI function in that. So with it, the understanding is our role is limited in scope, like we saw and we struggled with it as a city during COVID because it was a county public health role, and our role was to be in support, and that's what we did. And at that time with the city manager, my advice to him was to say yes to the county as often as possible and keep saying that we are available, we're available to help, we can do this here to get those things in to the city and to available to our residents. Some of the things to understand that our role becomes more primary around any emergencies that may involve water, right? We have a responsibility to create safe drinking water, to move it, to move wastewater, those other things, that production and distribution. We have primary responsibility for law enforcement emergencies that happen in the city, and then the operation of our city-managed roads, whether that be maintenance, snow, flooding of water. So we also have that primary role, as was outlined in post-incident damage assessment and debris removal, and then all other emergency types, we end up as a support role to the county. So to give an example, I wanted to outline an example scenario that we could kind of walk through because I think some questions came out of this example. If we look at if we were to have a tornado, and we talk about a tornado warning happen, which we had not too long ago. So the warning information for a tornado is provided by the National Weather Service. That information, they are the ones that develop the polygons, they are the ones that develop all of that information, and that information will flow through the Alert Montgomery and Alert Rockville systems in addition to other systems. One of the key things in giving information is the fact of whether or not you can follow up with information. So it's important that the expert and the available person to provide updates provides that information. A lot of times we get noise when we get in between. If you cannot follow up to give real-time updates to that situation about what actions people should be taking, you need to make sure that that channel stays open for that expertise. So if we were to have a tornado that strikes in Rockville, then our county fire rescue would be a lead on the life safety response to clear damaged structures, make sure that people are safe from that. Our city police would be our initial lead. They'd be doing street closures, they would be doing traffic issues, and they would be mobilizing additional city resources through their dispatch. The police dispatch is critical for activating other components of the city government. With that, County Health and Human Services and the Red Cross, they would provide human service and sheltering needs. That is a county function. In addition to that, our city public works and recreation and parks would be responsible for debris management. Our city CPDS would be responsible for damage assessment and issues around structural occupancy. Looking at a second scenario, if we would end up to have water source contamination. And I know there's been some reports about the potential impacts of water source contamination because the entire region uses the Potomac River Basin. So warning, if there were to be a contamination issue from water source, it would be provided through the Interstate Commission on the Potomac River Basin, Maryland Department of the Environment regarding water quality. Public Works would be the lead city department to provide advice to the city manager. Our Public Information Office would communicate status and instruction to the customers of our water service. And then my role would be to support and assist with coordination for any potential long outage. And then our county emergency management would coordinate additional resources for what would likely be a longer outage. So our Rockville emergency management is a single person. It's me. It's not a department. And I know we dealt with that during COVID around the limitations of that. But based on the scope of our responsibilities, it does make sense. So I serve as an advisor, a subject matter expert. I'm not operational. I work as an internal consultant to leadership in the operational departments around emergencies, manage the development and maintenance of the base continuity and emergency operations plan, and coordinate those updates as we do that, and serve as a liaison to county emergency management, the Maryland Municipal League Emergency Managers, and the National Capital Region for emergency managers. Just taking a look at the role, and I know those of you that are newer to this versus your colleagues who were in a elected role in government during COVID-19, they can share with you their perspectives and their experience with that. But things to consider is the impact on requests on ongoing operations. If there were to be an incident that happens, you should request and receive regular briefings from the city manager on operations. And based on the incident needs, advocate for additional resources with other levels of government. That could be the county, that could be the state, that could be the federal government, and to promote community preparedness before incidents. So that wraps up the information I wanted to share with you, and be happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Dr. Landau. I know that you were a regular at mayor and council meetings, and while I love seeing you, I'm glad we're not in the spirit of COVID discussions. So thanks for all the work that you're doing. I know my colleagues have several questions. I'll just say one is, as we think through the budgeting process, if there are things that we're missing or needing, or if there's an intern needed, I think that will be helpful for the mayor and council to learn more about. I know that's not a question that can be answered tonight, but just want to make sure that we are set up for success.
Absolutely.
The other question I had is, the county had, I know that they had their 2017 COOP plan posted online. Our COOP plan, and I know that the thoughts about this is like, do you actually want to post online? I'm assuming that you probably don't, right?
Emergency operations plan, when we get that finished, sure, but a COOP plan contains a lot of sensitive information.
Right. Yeah.
And that's about critical infrastructure and our systems, and the plan's more valuable if it's more detailed, and that's in that space, and that's where I don't advocate that be a public document because of its operational nature and the sensitive pieces of it.
I agree, and that plan for the county had specific roles of the county council. As you do your plan, I would like to know if there's specific things that consider scenarios for the mayor and council as well.
I think when we discussed that, it's a continuity of government, and you all went through that. There was a shift that you all still met, during our largest and longest disaster in U.S. history. It was a shift to virtual, right? And that, even with that was a continuity, and that's some of course, what contains in that plan for what things that we do as a city that can be taken virtual, and some that have stayed virtual because they're effective in that manner still. So, yeah, I think I've answered your question. Maybe.
You have. Thank you very much. I have other questions, but I'll yield for my colleagues' questions. Dr. Miles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This perhaps is not a fair question, so we can come back after the fact. One of the things that I was mindful of during the throes of the pandemic is some of the other powers granted to at least city council in the context of dealing with public health emergencies. One of which in our city charter has to do, I think it's in Article 4, Section 1B, about our ability to set up a board of health, as it were. And if we were to do that, what role would your office have in that? Again, it's a hypothetical of a hypothetical. So, come back at another time to address it. Again, I apologize for that.
Well, I think we can discuss it. Obviously, there would be some sort of a support role, but there wouldn't be any expertise. And I know some of that discussion about setting that up is where do you get that expertise to support it? And then a lot of that would be, as well on the city attorney's office about supporting that in developing regulation and of that nature. And we know that proceeded in that way as COVID developed, because originally the county executives were given authority through a governor's order that was then taken away from the county executives through another governor's order. So then the counties determined, many of them set up boards of health because that state law allowed them have basically the same authority, not vested in one person as the county executive, but could have the same function. And I think it's one of those things that sort of laid dormant in law because a lot of places didn't set up boards of health or didn't have existing boards. And I think one of the things that have come from COVID is that some have had standing meetings and things that have not been necessary based on the emergency, but realizing this authority needs to be part of government moving forward. So some had not met in many, many years as a Board of Health prior to COVID. So
Thanks so much for the reply. And I think my goal in posing the question is just to think about it. One of the things I kind of believe in terms of dealing with disaster, just be prepared, just to ward off evil spirits and bad things happening. So that's all. Thank you for the reply.
the people of Florida would like however you do that because they are in sights again. I know I've been dealing with family that's moving out of the path of a second hurricane, haven't recovered from the first one yet. So we can be thankful for our hazard profile versus others at times.
Thank you. Councilmember Fulton.
So thank you very much for the presentation. I will say, I know that you said people that were elected officials in government during the COVID-19. I was not an elected official in government. I was appointed official in government and dealt with a whole lot of the same things, and I understand how important it is to get all of these things right. I had maybe 3 points and/or questions. One, fully understanding why the COOP plan is not online. I get that. I am curious, because I noticed that it says that we've got 97 essential functions. So I would be interested to see, and I know that gets wheedled down, I believe, to mission essential functions, probably so I'd be curious what we decided were the prioritized most important things that we continue doing. So I'd like to see it at some point because I'm curious. I get why it's out there. And you also made reference to, I appreciate in emergencies and continuity situations that it's as important to know when to get out of the way as it is to know what to do. And I appreciate the way you framed this. So it's clear on who's doing what. But you also referenced continuity of government. So I think that level of preparedness of, if anything were to happen, even if our role is limited, what do we do? Where do we go? How do we find out? To have that really clear and upfront would be really useful.
And I think some of your own discussions too, and maybe in your, as you all talk, because there was a proposal before this council to expand the powers of the city manager, and the council decided not to do that, right? Because you all found a way to meet during that emergency and felt that you could perform all of that function. So there's I think some of that, at least that can be shared among those of you that were here to make that decision about that component of it as well. I wasn't on that side for that, but was here for it. So it would be good for you all to discuss that at some point.
Thank you for raising that. And again, an initial reaction to that is not trying to abdicate any responsibility in any regard. And I appreciate that our former mayor and council stayed together and were meeting. I also know that let the experts be the experts, the professionals be the professionals in the situation where it's executing duties. Last thing to the point that my colleague made on a health board, I do think it's important, I think the mayor said something like this too, to make sure that we have the resources and the flexibility in place to hire the expertise on a moment's notice when we need it. I know a lot of organizations hired health experts during COVID-19 and are able to do it quickly. So having the flexibility and having the resources on standby for whatever kind of expert we need to get in a moment's notice, I would definitely be supportive of making sure we were ready for that.
And just so you know, too, we had tremendous support from our Department of Health and Human Services. They were excellent. Even us supporting as we looked at occupational health issues. There was a lot, as everybody recalls about, can you open the building, can you not, what's safe for employees, what isn't, and that relationship. We enjoy a very excellent relationship with the county on a number of levels, including with us when we were working on employee testing programs for critical employees, and that relationship was really important. And one of the things to understand, and I had it in here, but I didn't say it, we have at the county level, there are 19 full-time staff and 4 contract staff full-time in the County Office of Emergency Management and Homeland Security. So we have a strong partner, and my role is more as a liaison to that. And that's where I think sometimes, understanding that expectation of what it is that we can do as a city with this function versus we're liaisoning with it to ensure that things happened. And that's, or happened for our residents, which is what we did during COVID.
Thank you. Just to comment on something you mentioned, we did grant authority to the city manager to make emergency purchases. We increased that amount to $250,000. This mayor and council did that, speaking to the comment of the flexibility. The other thing that was not previously done by mayor and council was that prior to COVID, council didn't meet online, surprisingly. And that changed, and we were quickly able to pivot and still allow mayor and council to meet online, which it was funny. We were talking about whether we could in the code even meet online, and then we did it because of COVID. So I just wanted to note that. And then the third thing is the county has been a tremendous partner on emergencies. We had, I think, bi-weekly meetings with the county at the elected level, and then you had many more at the staff level. I think that was essential. Actually, we coordinated across municipalities with our Maryland Municipal League Montgomery chapter and the county, and I know that you were part of those, and I want to thank you.
Well, and thank you, and thank you too, because we had good communication about what we needed as a city for you to take in, and that to those meetings as an elected representative of the city, which I think was important. Speaking to the fact that the briefings from the city manager about what we have that are needs that you all take in to discuss at the elected level are really important, that we have that coordination.
Thank you. Councilman Van Grack, and then I saw Councilman Valeri.
Thank you very much. This is a fantastic presentation. I echo what Councilmember Fulton said. The more detail we have with these types of issues, the better it's going to be. Because when you have an emergency, when you have problems, you can fall back on details. So the detail here is fantastic. I just did have one question about potentially more detail. I know you talked about funding with regard to FY 2025 and the new Taft Court project and the Operations Center maintenance that we're going to be putting together. But my question is, I would presume, and I'm just, sometimes when you presume you make mistakes, that our operations and how we're going to be flowing things will likely change once that Taft Court facility comes online and we have a different center, we have different operations and have multiple locations. So my question is, like, how do you foresee that going, and is there an ongoing process about potentially changing what we've got here when that comes into line and we'll have more resources and potentially different city staff in different locations when an emergency happens?
Well, we've always had in the existing plans, if we needed to pull together not the word EOC, but a city coordination center at the direction of the city manager, that if the city manager needs to gather the operational staff to support an on-scene, that it's always been in there. What'll just happen is a location change. And a lot of when we looked at the decision was made by the council previous to Mayor Ashton and Dr. Miles to have an emergency operations center. With that, it really just, that has been existed in the plans to do that. Now, what the capabilities of that will be and the coordination with the county are discussions that I have already started with our county director of the Office of Emergency Management and Homeland Security. So those things are ongoing, but we've had that in plans that if it was necessary, that the city manager could pull together, whether it's in this building or in another building.
Well, I guess, like, in addition to just having that operations center, that will essentially have different folks in different locations, right? Because primarily we're all centrally located here, but now we've got two kind of centrally located issue. I mean, are you foreseeing at least any of the plans adjusting because of that? Or are you just saying, because that's just the way the plan is, the plans are going to remain, it just might be more feasibility issues based on where people are located?
Yeah, and it would be. It would depend. Same thing with that. We had plans to use something here, but then also had an alternative facility based upon, if this building were affected, or if let's say there's power outages in certain parts and not others, that it would be better to move, even though it may be ungenerated power. Those type of things. There may be a number of factors. So it's more what happens there than where. That it happens somewhere is the important part, where all the operational pieces are pulled together to make sure that they're all being synergized in the right direction to get residents help that they need.
And just one follow-up, and again, I know this might be based on another assumption, but I presume that as we're developing what we need to do, and I know this council has been on tours at the Taft Court facility, you're consulted with, on an ongoing basis for what we need to have it, how the Operations Center is being addressed, and how things are being structured in case of some of the continuity of operation plans and what you've put together here, and what the needs might be to make sure the flow, as you've outlined wonderfully, is progressing in the way you would want to in an emergency situation.
Sure, and I will tell you that I was uncomfortable making the permanent decisions for an emergency operations center. So one of the things that we did was we brought in expertise to help us. Somebody, an emergency manager in their career may be lucky if they've built an emergency operations center one time. So we needed to bring in somebody to take a look at how the city operates. We had to have somebody help us make that, and it was a really good decision. And Director Simoneau's here; he was critical in making that decision and bringing those things, because what we did too, those decisions were not mine alone. We pulled together a group of users, so the departments that would be using that, of what are their needs, how do they foresee using it, and we filtered that. That was part of that expertise that we brought in to make sure, because you're doing this, you're making a 50-year decision or so for the city, and I was certainly not comfortable to make 50 years decisions on behalf of the city, and we pulled that group together. So thanks to Craig for that in that process.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Valeri, and then Councilmember Shaw.
Okay, so thank you. This is actually very funny because there are people in the room right now who know exactly what I was doing during COVID and how closely I worked with our community physicians. And saw a lot of the inefficiencies between the county and the state, but ultimately also between the city and the county, because we have an abundance of physicians, community physicians in Rockville. And so they have the on-the-ground knowledge. So I wanted to put the idea out there, and I don't know if our current chief medical officer at the county level, Dr. Keisha Davis. Don't know if this has come up yet, and I know everyone's still doing their post-pandemic assessment, but to me it would make sense to have liaisons from, physician liaisons from municipalities in the county that could, on a moment's notice, once a declared public health emergency occurs, that would then be able to do that sort of interconnectedness, because it felt very siloed, the response. I tuned in a lot. I heard from you a lot. I heard from the State Department of Health a lot weekly. And I think that there are some things that I'm hopeful come out of these listening sessions that the state's doing. But I wanted to put a plug that it may be something good to have identified a volunteer physician, perhaps, that could be that expertise in that realm, that may be a little bit more accessible than the county chief medical officer in that space. So I wanted to put a plug in for that. Shifting to weather, I saw under, everyone's responsibility, I saw that evacuations come under the responsibilities of the city. What does that look like?
That would be dependent upon the circumstance. It's cached within as if it were a law enforcement public safety event, right? There was a lot of caveats around those things. We have dams that could affect that. It could change the nature of who's making that call. It could be a hazardous materials incident where the expert is actually the on-scene commander for fire hazmat that's determining how far those things need to go. So those are not, that's not a pure statement within that. It's couched sort of within the law enforcement functions, but it may be from another component, if that makes sense.
Yeah, if you could flip to that slide where you outlined this. I know that it said it was limited in scope. I just wanted to see if whether or not, what sort of plan we may have in place for
imminent flooding. I now understand that you were mentioning where things are dammed, but the last deadly flooding, I was unclear kind of what would occur if we knew that this sort of flooding was coming again. I understand at the time everyone felt like this was a once in a lifetime rain event, but I'm hesitant to say that as somebody who lives less than 2 minutes from where someone died from flooding. So I'm a little, I want to make sure that we have a good plan for evacuation. I can tell you, both anecdotally and realistically, because I have it on video, I don't know what our plan is for if we know a major significant rain event is going to occur. Do we have a plan in place for other areas such as the congressional apartments, where there was the severe flooding post Tropical Storm Ida? These are my ongoing concerns. Because you never want to work from a deficit, right? So having everybody know that there is a plan, and that this is the plan should they feel that water is rising or they start feeling unsafe. I just hope that we have that. Similarly on weather, tornadoes are essentially a shelter in place, but I know for myself and others, I don't have a basement. And for other people who are in multifamily buildings, do we have the information and how we shared it with the public on what to do in the case of a tornado warning? I'm always thinking about that. My problem a little bit with, if you go to the weather slide, I get both Alert Rockville and Alert Montgomery alerts. That's a lot of the word alert. When the track of the Gaithersburg tornado came within a mile of King Farm, I did not get anything from Alert Rockville. And again, I say the track of it because, at that point you can only guesstimate, but we also know tornadoes are not always stay on what we think is going to happen. So that concerned me, and I think if you recall, I sent an email shortly after that because I couldn't find any information being pushed out. And frankly, there was a handful of folks in Rockville that were just trying to get the minimal information out to help people, but it was concerning to me that we were not taking the lead as a city on social media. And I apologize, you look a little confused, but we didn't that evening. I can tell you.
Well,
that
sort of speaks to the role and channel and authority. We don't have meteorologists, and we don't have them available 24 hours a day. So it's that's a function, and the county doesn't either. So nor does the state. So it's really a federal function as the National Weather Service to draw those polygons and send those things through. Now, I don't want to speak for our communications team. So I know they work very much to try and amplify the message of other areas of expertise, but there's a real danger in, and we discussed this during COVID, about trying to become the authority when you send the message out, because you can't really. We want to tune the people into the channels, wanted to tune them into the Department of Health and Human Services and tune them into the public health physicians that were giving guidance. And we have to be able to make sure that we do that we don't become the authority because we can't follow up with that information. We can't do that piece of it. The National Weather Service, and that's one of the few that's an original federal function when we get to it. And
I can appreciate that.
They draw the polygons, they do those things. So,
if I may, I can completely appreciate that. City of Gaithersburg got out consistent information, and I don't believe that they have a meteorologist on staff either. But I think if anybody feels, and a lot of people were nervous, seeing a tornado track anywhere close to us, and it did come very close to us. It was in Gaithersburg, not Poolesville. To not see anything about it, I feel like that would be part of our role, right? Like that, I shouldn't have to tune into the Weather Channel when all the surrounding jurisdictions are just sending, hey, keep an eye out, we're under a tornado warning. I can do that as a council member. And I did, actually, that whole evening, because I didn't see anybody else doing it. So that's a deficiency. I'm not asking for people to be meteorologists. And I will say our PIO office is fantastic, absolutely fantastic. I just felt like I thought it'd be more of a coordination with your office, with PIO, to see, okay, what is the county saying right now? What can we push out? And what, how can we do this? Again, I feel like other municipalities were able to do that and to make their residents feel safer. And so that's what I'll say on that. The final thing of putting a plug in for active shooter drills, actual drills for mayor and council, for staff, and for residents and guests in the chamber. Is there a plan to do that? I think right now, I know that there was a walkthrough. I was not here in person for that meeting, but actual like drilling or sharing information, is that something that's kind of on your long range or short range plan?
We've done training with staff, but my role is more of a community emergency piece, and I know there's been discussions about those things, and I know at least the police have addressed some of those concerns and some of those things about those elements. But as far as this operation, I've not been given any direction to do that at this point.
Okay, and I'm happy to chat further about, in particular, how we can share emergency weather information with our residents. Happy to continue that offline or maybe at another time.
Thank you, Councilmember Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Landau. This was a really excellent presentation. And I did want to echo Madam Mayor in our larger interest in learning about resources that can help streamline our emergency management, especially because community safety is one of our priorities. And I wanted to ask about JEDI. I know you touched on this in the presentation, that the EOP will specify a JEDI role. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that and just the broader emergency management strategy that will ensure an equitable preparedness as well as response?
We've outlined that, at least at this point, in a draft format, that that resource is a resource to the city manager, and that we should ensure that we are doing our best in equitable practices as we respond to emergencies. I think, at least from COVID, you could see the orientation of the city to support what was going on with the Department of Health and Human Services, to make sure that we made our facilities available in the targeted areas for people that were underserved, and the use of community organizations as partners to get that message in there and get people to get vaccinated. So there were some roles that took place that were, as a city, that we used our connections to our community organizations to help the Department of Health and Human Services get further with their message and get further with their goal of vaccination. So we were a partner in that aspect as well. So that's where the full, I guess you would say, the full weight, or all the things that we do across the city, that's part of pulling those things together and making sure that we're using everything, all of our resources that we have, and all of those community connections to make sure that we can make a difference for our residents, particularly those that are underserved.
And I would also add, in addition to our community organization, also houses of worship, of being trusted messengers. My second question, I know that the presentation and our functions are really heavily focused on response. Can you, considering that emergency management is a whole of community and everyone has a role, can you talk a little bit more about your preparedness approach?
Well, our preparedness approach has been building that foundation first, right? I'm here 5 years, but about 3.5 of them were stolen by COVID. So a lot of the things that needed to get done got pushed until afterwards. And that's where we ended up with just publishing our continuity of operations plan this year. We'll publish our emergency operations plan in the coming year. And those are all those foundational pieces. Now, in that staff that the county has people that are focused on outreach. We do not have that. So a lot of times what we look to do is partner with them. So for instance, not too long ago, we gave a preparedness presentation at Main Street, but that was partnered with the county because they have additional resources focused on community engagement. And that's where we want to partner and leverage those components to get that, and make sure it's happening for our residents in the city, and partner with them. And that's why we depend on them as such a strong partner, and we maintain that relationship for that reason.
And I appreciate that. I know during COVID, the county does have a lot of resources, like particularly around languages, and we don't have that same level. So that's really important. And I just want to thank you. Excellent work. And I look forward to reviewing the EOP in December.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think Councilmember Fulton mentioned and I think Councilmember Valera as well, interest in seeing the COOP plan. I also am interested. I just wanted to see, do we need a majority to request that? Or are you good to send it to us?
We're okay to send it to.
Okay.
Under
thank you.
confidential cover.
And we recognize it will be confidential. Thank you. The other thing I wanted to mention is, and thank you, Councilmember Shaw, the comments on the shared resources with the county. I completely agree. I had in my notes also that there are times where the county, because they run point on something, they have resources that we don't have. And in the past, there has been some times where we'll share resources and sometimes we don't. And I wonder if we could look at, maybe as you're developing your EOP, on if there's a matrix on when we would be sharing county resources or not. There's sometimes they're offering things that I think our residents would like to know, and it'll be great to be able to include that. We can retweet it, we can put it, just amplifying their message so that our residents are getting access to those resources. Is that something that's okay to do? Okay, I know there were different philosophies on that in the past, so I just wanted to have a new council, new leadership, and wanted to ask the question. Okay. Thank you. The other piece is I want to make a public service announcement that you can go online right now and sign up for Alert Rockville. If you go to our website under Contact Us or Stay Connected, actually says sign up for alerts at the very bottom of the page. You can then also indicate what you want to sign up for. So please, if you're listening, I encourage your neighbors to sign up for Rockville alerts because you want to be on that list in case there's an emergency that you're getting an update on what's going on. And they can do text messages, emails, etc. There are two categories that I didn't see listed on the Rockville alerts that have come up recently. One is air quality. The city did do a good job of retweeting the county on that when there were, I think, the Canadian fires that were really impacting the air quality here in the city of Rockville, and I found it tremendously useful to know for parents and families and seniors and everyone to know when it was safe to be outside for extended period of time or not. I didn't see that listed on our Rockville alerts or whether there's a way to tie into the county so that people can get those alerts through that system. So I wanted to flag that. The other one, the category I didn't see was heat waves. Unfortunately, with climate change, we're seeing more of those. I mean, how hot it is today, given that it's October, but there were very, very high heats this summer. And I know that was something that this body has kind of emailed about in terms of providing information to the public on that, as well as when the county has cooling centers, that will be helpful. I did see that it does have categories for wind, flood, winter alerts, fire, traffic, and recycling and refuse. So I just wanted to, maybe there's an opportunity to take a fresh look on what is missing from that list so that we can better coordinate and notify our residents. I had a question about the Emergency Operations Center. I know that is moving along nicely. How long are we looking at? You don't have to answer now, but just to be able to get back to us on.
We'll get you an update on that.
Perfect. That would be fantastic. Thank you. And then to the comments about just preparing for scenarios, I don't recall when the building has had a fire drill. Maybe it has, and I wasn't in the building when it happened, but do we, there are a lot of corporations and organizations that just help staff to prepare. I've seen sometimes people leave a building and they like stay right by it, and like, that's not the greatest idea, but just talk to people about what should you do in the event of specific types of emergency, just so that people are prepared. I see a thumbs up.
Yep, we do fire drills. We'll continue to do so.
Okay, thank you. I'd hate to even say this, but water security, you mentioned it, and I know that it was included in the previous budget. Are we in a good place there?
I will say I think we are, but Craig might want to give a better response since we're making some upgrades there.
We have made significant progress on water security from the information technology cybersecurity aspect. There's a project in our CIP, and IT is leading that one. Significant progress on that. The physical security one is an upcoming year, so we haven't, however, we have looked at cameras and made significant progress on whole new technology out there with cameras and figuring out exactly what camera we need and what's location there. We've made a lot of progress in that. So we're moving along. The last one is physical security, which is an upcoming CIP.
That's fantastic. I know that there was some budget money,
Yes.
budgeted money included in the last 2 years, so I appreciate that, that it's moving along nicely. Related to water, I was at a White House meeting last week where they were talking about some municipalities. I think Westminster is the first in Maryland to try it, but planning to reuse water. There are a number of things, like it could be for emergencies, could also be because of climate change, just trying to be more mindful. I don't know if Rockville has looked at that. I don't need an answer now, but I just wanted to raise it.
A lot of communities are doing that, running whole new lines to use recycled water for irrigation purposes, et cetera. Usually the communities that do that have their own wastewater plants that have the capability to send the first treated effluent back. We don't have that, so we don't have a ready available capability to do that here. And our water shortages here are usually not what they are in other parts of the country.
Okay, I just raise it just as other municipalities thinking future forward. We don't have it yet, maybe. All right, and then I wanted to just say one small emergency that we don't think about is we've been seeing a lot lately where something happens to power lines and our street lights are out. And I want to commend Rockville City Police Department. I remember Veers Mill, there must have been a dozen officers out there in high heat, which was actually scary, the amount of traffic that they were managing. And I don't know, it seems to be happening more frequently. It concerns me, one from a manpower, woman power perspective, but the other just also in terms of cost of the city. And I wonder if we have ever looked at the cost of the city and shared that with PEPCO so they have an understanding of what these outages mean to us.
Every time we have an outage, certainly we exhaust some overtime costs, and when we have those, we do share those with PEPCO. I think candidly, Mayor, this is a symptom of climate change.
Mm-hmm.
We're having more heat events throughout the United States. We're having more pressure on the electric utility and therefore more outages, plus an aging infrastructure. So, but PEPCO is keenly aware of it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Semino, did you want to add anything?
Many of you probably don't know this, but all of our city-operated traffic signals are on battery backup. And you will not see that on the state and the county-operated signals. We're reassessing our battery backup right now to update that because some of them have been fairly dormant for years, so they're going to have to replace the battery, but we do have that capability. And so they'll work for 6 to 8 hours when the power goes out.
That's an astute comment because where I see it happening is 355 and Veers Mill.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Can we put them in there and charge them? I mean, I think it's worth maybe not only sharing with PEPCO, but sharing with the state, because these are major, major roads, and I've seen dangerous things where our officers are in danger, but also our community is in danger when, I mean, they're complicated intersections.
I've made that suggestion to them half a career ago.
Well, maybe we have some legislative priorities to talk about later. But that seems to be very smart that the city is doing that. And I wonder if we can look at particular intersections that are very complicated, at least to start. that we can partner on that, because it really is a problem. Colleagues, any other comments or questions? Well, we knew this would be an exciting topic. Thank you for your leadership, and we appreciate all the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues have requested a brief break, so if we can take 5 minutes and be back 8:31. Priorities for 2025. Welcome, Linda Moran, and I know you have a team of folks to also introduce.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Thank you very much. We have with us this evening, along with me, Linda Moran with the Rockville City Manager's Office, Christine Crone, Ms. Pam Casemeyer, and Ms. Dana Kaufman from our state representation team in Annapolis. So this is the Mayor and Council's State Legislative Priorities 2025 work session, as well as legislative bond initiatives. We'll start off with a quick outline for the work session presentation this evening. We'll begin with an introduction. We'll have a background, proposed priorities, discussion, next steps, requested feedback, and we'll end with questions. So each year, the Mayor and Council select, adopt, and approve an annual legislative state priorities program. The 2025 General Assembly session will begin on January 8th and end on April 7th, 2025. It is very important for the Mayor and Council in the City of Rockville to adopt an annual state legislative priorities program. It helps to communicate and convey the elected body's position on important state bills, as well as outline for stakeholders on what are the key issue areas that the Mayor and Council are going to focus their advocacy and engagement in the upcoming session. It also provides a strategic roadmap for the city's legislative and advocacy engagement in the upcoming session, and it also allows staff to be effectively positioned to quickly respond when bills are introduced or revised in a very quick manner, and it lets city staff to be well positioned to respond in a way that protects and promotes the interests of the Rockville community and residents. So before we dive in, there are some factors impacting the 2025 upcoming General Assembly session that we want to point out that are going to have a big impact. And so there are large projected state budget deficits. In 2025, the deficit is projected to be at about $1 billion, and then that skyrockets in 2027 to about $3 billion. So the key takeaway here is that in the 2025 session, it's going to be very difficult to pass legislation that increases the state budget. So a quick recap of 3 state legislative priorities that the Mayor and Council approved back on June 10th. They approved these 3 priorities as MML legislative action requests that were forwarded to them for consideration in the program. The first item is a legislation that would require the State Highway Administration to be responsible for the maintenance and repair of sidewalks and bicycle pathways. The second item would be expanded access for low to moderate income homeowners and seniors to the state homeowners property tax credit. This would provide relief to residents who are experiencing inflationary pressures and cost of living increases. The third item is to protect and preserve municipal highway user revenue. This is the single largest revenue stream that comes into the city from the state, and it helps the city to pay for the costs of repairing and maintaining its transportation infrastructure. So the proposed 2025 state legislative priorities are here on this slide. You'll see 9 bullets as well as 2 legislative bond initiative options. The first 2 bullets are MML adopted priorities that their board approved for 2025. The next 4 are ongoing legislative priorities that the Mayor and Council have been advocating for a number of years. The last 3 bullets are priorities and/or legislation that the Mayor and Council have either supported or expressed interest on, and again, 2 bond bill options for the Mayor and Council's consideration. So we'll begin with the first item, and that's speed monitoring systems, person altering, it's issuing the citation. So this is an MML priority, and this would allow for a trained technician to sign off on speed camera violation notices. Currently, only a sworn officer is allowed to do this. This legislation would make better use of police resources out in the community. It would also bring the speed camera program in alignment with the red light camera program, which allows for technical staff to sign off on violations. The next item is the admissions and amusement tax. This would allow a 2% local food and beverage fee on this tax. This would allow some expanded revenue-raising authority for municipalities. The next item deals with advocating in support of educational needs across the spectrum. This largely is advocacy for capital improvement funding as well as operations funding for youth of all ages, beginning at birth, going through community college, and also including child care programming. The next item is advocating in support of the city's Vision Zero and master planning efforts. This entails getting state legislation passed that would make it clear in state law that the State Highway Administration is responsible for maintaining all of their transportation infrastructure, including sidewalks, including streetlights on sidewalks, streetlights at intersections, enhanced safety improvements from SHA, and also adding the comparative negligence law that the member from the RBAC spoke about earlier. The next item is advocating for legislation that supports the city's climate action goals, and that focuses on reducing greenhouse gas emissions, prioritizing equity, and building resilience. The next item relates to advocating for senior programs such as senior wellness and recreation programming, senior transportation funding, and aging in place, and other related activities. The next item entails advocating for Youth Service Bureau funding restoration legislation and out-of-school activities for teens. This has been an area of great interest in the Mayor and Council, and this kind of programming supports mental health services, youth development, and other kinds of enrichment programming for youth and their families. Just cause eviction legislation would prevent a landlord from terminating lease during the lease period. It would also prevent a landlord from seeking to end a holdover lease without good cause. The next item is don't block the box legislation. This would prohibit a vehicle on a green or a yellow from proceeding all the way through an intersection. If there's blockage, it would prohibit the vehicle from entering the legislation. And so now moving on to legislative bond initiatives, we have two projects from the Mayor and Council's consideration that we're recommending that the city forward to the District 17 delegation for their consideration. The first project is the Elwood Smith Community Recreation Center. That would be for $500,000 in state bond bill funding. That would be a renovation at the facility that would eliminate some ADA barriers, construct some single-user ADA compliant bathrooms. It would reconfigure office space to be used for after-school community programming and summer camps. And then the second option is the Talbot Street Park. And at this park, there's been a water tower that's been decommissioned. And so this capital improvement projects would build a park on this 0.5 acre parcel of street-owned land. And the city would work with the community to ask them which amenities they would like. The 2020 Recreation and Park Strategic Plan identifies this area of the city as being park deficient. So this park could serve a need. There's a number of multifamily complexes in that area, as well as the Woodmont Park apartments. So in terms of next steps, staff will prepare a resolution based on the broad feedback and direction received tonight from the Mayor and Council. On October 21, 2024, the Mayor and Council will have the opportunity to adopt the resolution. On November 18th, a representative from the city will be sent to the Joint House and Senate priorities hearing before the state delegation, and that will be an opportunity for the Mayor and Council's 2025 state legislative and priorities and bond bill initiatives to be showcased at the hearing. And then in the coming weeks and months, the state legislative priorities and legislative bond initiatives that are adopted will be used as a collaboration tool to work with District 17 and other stakeholders for Rockville and the Mayor and Council to advance its priorities. So the requested feedback that staff is asking the Mayor and Council this evening are two key questions. Number one, does the Mayor and Council support the 2025 state legislative priorities? And number two, does the Mayor and Council have other priorities to add? We'll end with questions, and our state representation team and their staff from a variety of departments that are available to help answer the mayor and council's questions. We look forward to your feedback, conversation, and direction, and we'll turn it back over to you, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to help us organize our discussion, just want to see if my colleagues would be open to maybe taking the bond ideas first, because that'll be quick and easy, and then we can get to the legislative priorities. Is everyone good with that? Okay, perfect. I did want to note that I checked in, just as a sneak peek, with our D17 delegation, District 17 leaders, that's our 3 delegates and senator, to just make sure, because I know that things have to be fundable, and they actually have to put it forward on our behalf, so they were good with what we shared. So I just wanted everyone to have that context as we talk about those. I support them. I do think that the language could be, I know this is not going to be the final language because it's just brief, but just as we always do, to look at, what is supporting equity. I know, for example, the Talbot piece in particular is one. And then I know that some of them, I think you did a really good job on the Elwood Smith, because it kind of gets to the subpopulations that really need that work. But I just wanted to flag that the lens that they are looking for when money is very tight at the state level, just thinking through how this is supporting state priorities as well. So that's one comment on that. The second comment on the legislative bond initiatives is it was extremely helpful for our colleagues to come and tour and see these projects, so they can actually feel a connection to them, ask questions before then they have to make the case before their other state legislative colleagues. Is everyone okay with that? Any comments on that? Okay. Questions on LBIs? Councilor McGrath.
Thank you. First, I agree with what the mayor said. I think these are 2 really good legislative bond proposals, but I did have one question. In speaking with our District 17 delegation, they had conveyed to me a potential interest, in addition to what the city is looking for our specific legislative bonds, also potentially putting together a legislative bond initiative with regard to the Rockville Volunteer Fire Department, and potentially funding them for the loss that they incurred as a result of the computer scam that they dealt with. Now, I know that wouldn't necessarily be the funds that the city's receiving, but could there be an avenue of us supporting that, even though it's not funds towards us, as part of kind of a separate bonds initiative that's initiated by the our delegation?
Yes, the mayor and council and the city could support RFD's legislative bond initiative, and we could, we could send testimony, we could make it known and advocate in support of that. The city can certainly do that.
So, and just so I understand, is that something that, how would we coordinate that? Is that something that the Rockville Volunteer Fire Department would have to do their own specific proposal in working with the District 17 so that they've get their legislation in proposal, but that's still something the city could support, even though it's not our specific request?
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely, that's correct. And we could, if they need some support as they develop their legislative bond initiative, working with District 17, we could give them some support. And then once the bond initiative is put in, the mayor and council could send a letter of support, mention it. Actually, the mayor and council will sit down with the delegation in Annapolis in the upcoming session. They could do advocacy there. So there'll probably be several opportunities. So we can certainly collaborate with RFBD on that.
Great, thank
project.
you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, and Linda and team have done a really nice job of providing technical assistance. That most recently happened with the Rockville Housing Enterprises David Skull project. We shared with them how to apply, and then we also did a letter of support. So exactly what you said. I think if we could take those actions, that would be tremendously helpful for the fire department. And I do recall D17 saying that they would work with the fire department as well, but it can't hurt for us to help and add additional support. Completely agree. Any other comments or questions on this? Councilman Valeri.
So I had a question about the 2 LBI requests in front of us, and I guess it's more about what's not in front of us. Were there any ideas or proposals that we shared with D17 that they didn't like and therefore did not make this final cut? I'm just trying to get a sense of, how the list gets winnowed down to two, and kind of what the thinking and the rationale is for them.
So I'll start off, and depending if there's more questions, I believe we have Chris Henry on the line from Rec and Parks. But usually these types of projects are recreation focused. They're sort of community driven. There's community activities, and they're usually shovel ready. The legislature likes to see projects where there's a budget, where there's a plan. They're not as keen on projects that are just conceptual. In recent years, the legislature has not required a match, but the city likes to put projects forward that does have the required match, because that could change at any time, and perhaps it could this year since the state budget is going to be tight. But these, staff took a look at the possible projects that were out there, and given the funding amount and the types of projects that District 17 likes to see, again, they're very community-oriented. We've had Bonneville projects at the Swim Center, at the F. Scott Fitzgerald Center. They're those types of, community recreation, bringing a lot of people together, gathering spaces, those kind of needs. Equity focus, which, we believe these projects have as well. So that was some of the thought that was put into this.
I can share one project that wasn't funded was the Rockville Swim Center renovation. And there are other projects that we have supported that maybe the delegates will support, but not the other bodies. And they both put forth their appropriate recommendations. So it was, for me, important just to check, do both sides support these two projects? Because we have experienced when you don't get all the whole delegation excited about it, then it may mean that we don't get the same amount. And I will just note this. I looked at some of the previous years, and not counting what nonprofits get directly through D17, but sometimes Gaithersburg has gotten 100,000 more. Sometimes they've gotten two projects. That's something one of the delegates had flagged for me. So I appreciate that we're submitting two projects this year, and hopefully we can get on more equal footing. So I think the work that you did last year with the tours, as well as the cheat sheets, not cheat sheets, but just the fact sheets that we can bring with us to Annapolis, and the legwork we did to go and visit and really strengthen our relationship is critical to getting these funded. Okay. So we'll make a motion just to approve these two for the bond initiatives, if everyone's okay, and then also the next steps in terms of supporting Rockville Volunteer Firefighter, technical assistance and support, setting up tours, as well as the D17 fact sheet to include this. Who wants to make a motion? Councilmember Valeri.
I'm feeling bold. I move that we support the proposed 2025 legislative bond initiatives, Elwood Smith Community Recreation Center and Talbot Street Park. You want all of it together?
Yeah, and
Okay.
also the other next steps.
Okay, and then that we support, essentially, what are we supporting? The Rockville Volunteer Fire Department's separate bond initiative to correct their financial situation.
The tours.
Oh, and the tours and the action items, thank you. And the tours and the action items. I'll just co-sign what the mayor just said.
Councilmember Shaw, second? All right, Councilmember Shaw seconds. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Excellent, thank you very much. That was nice and easy. All right, moving on to the legislative priorities. You've listed them and we have them on the screen for the listening public. I will just see if our colleagues have any comments or questions. And before we move forward with discussion, is it okay? I know that we have submitted like our top 3 priorities sometimes, and then you have, additional listed. How are you planning to organize this? Do you need us to tell you our top 3, or can we include all of these?
We can include all of these. These are, when this goes before at the Joint House and Senate Priorities hearing, we will find a way to have them hear all of these.
Okay. I had just a few quick things to add to it. We had a conversation earlier about State Road streetlights. I just, either under the pedestrian safety section or under the climate change section, I think we could make the case in either of those of why this is needed. So I don't know if our colleagues are open to just asking, why not? I think it's important that we look for ways to address what we know is happening more frequently. It has a big draw on safety as well as our budget for overtime pay. Is everyone okay with that? Okay, majority. I'll hold and see if anyone else has comments or questions. I have a few more, but I'll wait. Councilmember Shaw.
I would like to move forward with all of these. Just a point of clarification for the just cause eviction. What this does is, if this does pass, and I'll say the Senate because it did pass the House in the last session. If it does pass, then we would then have to do our own ordinance to pass just cause or good cause eviction. What this does is actually lift the ban on good cause eviction. Is that correct?
Thank you. So my understanding, the county would pass the legislation, and then the city would need to take appropriate action to have it apply in the city. And we would coordinate with the city attorney's office to advise on the best way to proceed if that's what the mayor and council would want to do.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilmember Shaw. Councilmember Fulton.
Thank you. I support all of these. I just want to ask maybe one clarifying question, because I heard you mention the comparative negligence that was brought up during community forum. I don't think it was in the packet, but I do. Are we agreeing when we support this that advocating in favor of comparative negligence falls under the Vision Zero initiatives? I just want to make sure we're all, okay. And the second thing, apologies for not thinking of this earlier, but when we talked about a tight budget environment and also some of our Vision Zero plans and the speed monitoring systems, I seem to recall that last year during the budget cycle, we talked about revenue from speed cameras, and there was some state law that capped the fine at something that had not been indexed to inflation in 30 years. Yeah? I would like, it was like it hadn't been raised in like 30 years. I'd like to recommend and see if my colleagues would be in favor of supporting, if I'm right, that is a state law, seeing if that could be revisited given current inflation.
Yeah. I see Pam Casemeyer just maybe having some thoughts. I just wanted to see if you could respond to our colleague here.
Yeah.
Something that you could enact legislation about. At the moment, that's not how they're structured. So it may be that we would want to talk with stakeholders or talk with the agencies and stuff, but it's not a legislative amendment because it's not now in law. It's determined by the courts.
That's really helpful. Thank you. So that is a court-determined limitation on penalty.
Yeah, the courts determine it. They have a framework. The state police are involved with that framework, but it's not in the code, the statute itself, or actual regulation.
Thank you. Would love to find an avenue at some point to see if there's a way we can think about that, but I really appreciate the clarification. That's all. Otherwise, I support everything here.
Thank you. So I'm seeing a head shake from the city manager. That's something we can still advocate for, just to a different body. I agree, and frankly, the state collects that money, and they're having a transportation shortfall. So why not consider it? Is everyone okay with this? Straw poll, yes. Okay. All right. Dr. Miles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I also support the areas of focus for the upcoming General Assembly session. Like my colleague here, I think we're on the same wavelength. She even got me on my chair on time, too. So beside that, I do certainly support adding the contributory negligence to our Vision Zero efforts. And that was brought up by the Rockville Bike Advisory Committee Chair. One of the other things discussed during the most recent Rockville Bike Advisory Committee meeting is to see to what extent we can include discussion of support for more complete streets look up and down Rockville Pike. It is a highway that spans the state from Frederick all the way down to Georgetown. Certainly, the focus within RBAC is putting bike infrastructure, but I think bike infrastructure also assists and helps others, all forms of transportation in terms of making streets safer. Again, the question would be, to what extent can we include discussion for support of looking at 355 holistically, particularly from the non-motorized perspective? That's all.
Thank you. So I heard two things from my colleagues. One is the contributory negligence. Is that right? Okay. Straw poll on that. Is everyone okay? Okay. All right. The second thing I heard was just more complete streets along 355 and Veers Mill and any other places that have high crash incidences or fatalities, which is all state roads, as my colleague says. Everyone okay with that? I'm seeing majority says yes. Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure we're being clear in our guidance. Councilmember Van Grack.
I do support these initiatives. Just two comments. Number one, I just want to make sure, because I know the climate action goals is important, and I know that when we had the first round, we didn't have a couple of the bills that were out there, and we had to go back, and I think we cut it close, and I know we had to run with some short timing, so I just want to make sure that when those initial bills get out there, some of those, but along those lines, and I know it was in that secondary discussion, I know Councilmember Valeri and I talked about some of the legislation that was out there regarding invasive species. And I know the city, just recently in the last meeting, was talking about some of the proposals that we're doing that might be more strict with regard to native and invasive species. If there's some bills out there that specifically address the same type of issues that we're looking to do in Rockville, whether it's prioritizing native species or making sure that there is a restriction against invasive species from a state as a whole, so we're not an island where it might cost more, not only would be better for the state, but it could also benefit the city as a whole. I know there were some bills that we had talked about last session, and that's just an idea that I'd like us to potentially look at with this legislative session.
Thank you for your comments on those. I had, just to add on to this, I had a note, and thank you for raising this, is we have two commissions that have been extremely helpful to us in identifying pieces of legislation and recommending to the mayor and council things that we support. Particularly the Environment Commission as well as the Transportation Mobility Commission, it's my understanding that the process is they either share something proactively with us, but we also will send a summary of key bills that affect those two areas to the commissions. Can we continue to do that?
Yes.
Okay, and then we'll also watch for invasive species pieces of legislation. And then I would also just add additional tenant pieces of legislation. I anticipate more of that happening. Okay. Everyone okay with that? Okay. Councilmember Shaw.
Just a quick question. Could you, Ms. Moran, could you just confirm if just cause eviction passes, that we won't have to wait for the county, that we could pass our own ordinance, or we will have to wait for the county?
Or do we have to research it?
Or Mr.
Ms.
Dawson?
Casemeyer, well, I read, the fiscal note stated that it gives enabling authority to the county. I don't know if Ms. Casemeyer wants to add, but to confirm, I'd like to ask the city attorney, maybe we could have them follow up, yeah, not tonight.
I know we have our own independent housing authority and different laws than the county, so that would be helpful. Thank you.
We will follow up, thank you.
Councilmember Valeri, sorry I missed you earlier.
It's okay. I won't take it personally. Okay, so I have a couple of things. Mostly everything has been covered, and is covered by these issue areas. A particular note is anything related to efficiency and focus on urban highways by SHA. I know that would come under Vision Zero / master plan efforts, but that would be, I would love to be extremely supportive of that. I would also, as somebody who really pushed for the Youth Service Bureau funding, reinstating that, which would be great. I would actually also be open to making it even, similar to how we say advocate for senior programming. I would be open to advocate for youth programming, specifically for at-risk youth, something like that, because there may be other opportunities outside of restoring the funding for the bureaus. What else was I going to say? I presume that the don't block the box legislation, because it is, could fall under Vision Zero and the master plan. Would that kind of live under there and not just kind of outside of it, or does it not really matter? Because I could see it kind of coming under that in particular.
It could be either way, but we could bullet it under the Vision Zero. We have a number of bullets that are carrying over from last year that the mayor and council are still interested in. So we could place that under the
Yeah.
Vision Zero master plan.
And however your process is, I just wanted to flag that would definitely live there. I want to echo the outside the legislature advocacy for catching up our fines for speeding. I think that would be absolutely great. We won't make any best friends, but I think ultimately it's the right thing to do. There was one other thing. Thank you to Councilmember Van Grack for bringing up my favorite topic, which is whatever we can do on invasive species. Yes.
You said ban not weed?
Yes, Van Notweed. Yes, Councilmember Van Notweed. I don't know what that turns me into though, but I would also like, and I think it would probably fall under invasive species as a whole. Any efforts, since we're seeing a rise, there's a theme for me tonight, seeing a rise in invasive species like the spotted lanternfly. If there's any sort of particular push for mitigation, eradication efforts, I would love for us to be able to advocate for that. They're pretty destructive.
Thank you. So we'll add that to our watch list of pieces of legislation. I know we have environment, tenant, pedestrian bike safety, transportation safety, and invasive species added there. Okay. I'm going to hold my comments. I know Councilmember Jackson hasn't had a chance to speak.
I will be brief, Madam Mayor, but let me just add to my colleagues all the comments that they made. I agree with, and I want to thank Ms. Moran for the work that she's done. I think these categories are fantastic in terms of what we should be supporting. And I just want to add to Councilmember Van Grack, thank you for your work on the volunteer fire department. I think that's an excellent addition, and I fully support us helping with their bond initiative. So thank you, Mayor, but yes, I fully support these priorities.
Thank you. I have a couple comments I'll try to breeze through. One important thing that I think we should just be clear on is there has been some communication to various municipalities that the state may or may not help on elections going forward. And so I would like to make sure that we are collaborating with the Maryland Municipal League. I know our city clerk and city attorney have been following this issue very closely, but I think it prudent to at least note that we would like continued support. And I believe there's going to be some state legislation based on the update I shared last week from MML that would help clarify that, because right now it does not necessarily speak to support from municipalities. Colleagues, what do you think about that? Yeah. Okay, full thumbs up. Great, and I'm seeing shaking heads. All right, the other piece that relates to youth and education, it doesn't have to be a whole new priority, but maybe a sub-initiative. There are two things for that. One is continued support for juvenile services. We have situations that Rockville City Police Department has encountered where the same adolescent or youth is committing multiple crimes, but is not getting into support that they need for restoration to address the issue. And so I just wanted to be on record as a body saying that we need to increase juvenile services support. I just want to see if my colleagues would support that. Okay, all thumbs up on that. The other issue for the education priority that we have there, in collaboration with the MCEA, they shared with me that one of the challenges that Montgomery County is having, which led to potential furloughs and staff funding freezes, which affects our community residents, is that the blueprint formula has unintended consequences where Montgomery County is not getting its fair share to implement the mandates of the blueprint, and to have that looked at so that we could get a better formula. There's also no requirement for the local funder to add new monies to cover the additional cost. And so the county is finding some new money, but not enough. And that caused concerns for severe furloughs, layoffs, and increasing in class sizes. So I just thought we might say something about that as well. I wanted to see what my colleagues think. Okay, full support on that.
Okay.
I think that covers my comments. Anybody else have any comments? All right. Councilman Fulton.
Sorry, I just had one question. When we talked about sharing with the Transportation and Mobility Commission as well as the Environmental Commission. It prompted me to think, particularly when we started talking about youth services, if there are other commissions that we have that we also want to be including as we look for feedback beyond those two. I don't specifically Education Commission, the Youth Commission. I was just looking at the charter. It seems to cover youth services in the broader area. So I just thought I'd offer that.
Mr. City Manager?
Yeah, Mayor, we're happy to share the legislative priorities with all the advisory boards and just let them know if they see legislation that they're interested in, they can contact us and we'll work with them on that. Happy to do it.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Okay, and I know that one difference is that we actually proactively pulled pieces of legislation for, and I know it's a lot of work, but we actually proactively pulled legislation for the two commissions. So I just wanted to flag that there's two things. One is reaching out to the other commission and saying if there's legislation you'd like us to support, let us know, and know that it would be up to the mayor and council then to decide on which of the ones that we would then go and testify or write letters about. So that process is clear. Sometimes there was a little bit of confusion on that in the past, so I wanted to just clarify that. And then the second piece is what we're proactively sharing. So I think it's good to share our priorities, but I know that you would have to use your discretion on the staff resourcing to support other polls.
Yeah, maybe just really quick, when it comes to any testimony, letters, et cetera, we should always have a collective approach on that. The advisory board shouldn't be off kind of doing their own thing.
Yeah, and I think that's an important part of the communication.
Completely agree.
Okay, all right. Thank you. All right, so to just recap, we talked about backup or solar traffic lights, just cause eviction follow-up, contributory negligence, complete streets on state roads, working with our commissions to let them know that we're open to feedback, as well as proactively sharing pieces of legislation for them to potentially weigh in on. We talked about invasive species as a legislative watch, and State Board of Elections follow-up, juvenile services, and the blueprints. One thing I did not mention, just to put out there, is the senior and low income tax that we as a city provide and the state helps to administer does not include people with disabilities. And I know that people are getting Social Security, they've been kind of designated as disabled by this Social Security Administration. That may have an impact. They have a severe enough impact that their income is limited. And so I just wanted to flag that perhaps that might be something to consider and explore. I don't know if the finance team would like to look at that, but I just wanted to note that was a population that I saw missing. And as we're trying to be more inclusive, I thought I'd raise it. Did you want to make a comment? Sorry.
I'd have to get up to speed on it, but certainly work with the finance team to study that. Thank you, Mayor.
Does anyone have any comments on that? Okay. I think that's it. So
we're going to come back on October 21st with a resolution, including all the items on the screen, plus all the additions you guys all mentioned today, and council can vote on the resolution, and we'll have clear direction. Thank you, Mayor.
do you want us to make a motion on these legislative priorities as discussed?
Tonight's work session format, I just needed broad feedback, and I received it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so you guys are fully clear. Thank you to our legislative team in full. We appreciate all of your work. I know there's a lot of testimony coming up, and then we'll be talking about who's available to go and testify versus also sending letters.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll now move on to mock agenda. Agenda item 13. Does anyone have any comments? Okay, and I see that you've already updated based on our feedback this morning. That was excellent and fast. Kudos, team. All right, moving on then. We are done with this agenda item. Moving on to old new business. Are you raising your hand? Councilmember Jackson.
So we talked about the Board of Education and the city going and presenting. I'm just wondering, do we have language yet, or will we have language? And what's the plan for that?
Staff will provide recommended speaking points. Then it's really up to the council to decide who you'd like to represent the body.
Okay.
So we'll have the fact sheets that are developed, and we'll do tours on our legislative bond initiatives, but also visits to Annapolis. We kind of broke those up and met with our legislators last year, and I know that we will share proactively, potentially meet with G17 like that again.
No. So I'm talking about the Board of Education.
Oh, Board of Education. Yeah, sure. Yes. Thank you. All right. I have a few small things. One is, unfortunately, and very disturbing, is that there has been some hate speech language painted on some city property. I know that MCPS, Montgomery County Public Schools, has been dealing with this since the start of school. I want to thank staff for quickly moving to address that so that it limited who was affected. But I just want to know that we do not tolerate hate speech anywhere, particularly on city property. We will erase it immediately. So just if you see it, I hope that you don't in the future, but please call 311 to report it. We're also tracking this to be able to see the incidences throughout the city of Rockville. Mr. Mihalik, did you want to say something?
No, thank you for bringing it up, Mayor. I just will agree. People see it, please call immediately. We're on it. We'll abate the nuisance and hope it won't happen again. So thanks for bringing it up tonight. We appreciate it. And staff did a really nice job of getting out to those sites and painting over them very, very quickly.
Thank you. Councilmember Valeri.
Just super quickly on that point, sometimes when city residents call 311, no matter what number you call, they will tell you to contact somebody at City Hall. So if that does happen, or even in advance of that, to call the non-emergency City of Rockville Police Department number. I don't have it in front of me, but I know a lot of residents have gotten the runaround on other issues when they've tried to call 311 because we are City of Rockville, and when they give their address, that's what they say. So it's really fun.
So you can call 240-314-8900. That will get to our police department. Councilmember Shaw.
And residents are able to call City Hall if they're not comfortable calling the police, correct? Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just want to add that.
Yep.
They just 311 is a joke.
All right, so the other thing I wanted to just comment on is, and I shared this with our city manager, we've gotten a couple queries about the community grants, just to see is, the comments was that the deadline is shorter this year, October 14th. Is it possible to verify that? It doesn't have to be now, but just to share an update. I know that we worked in the budget season, we wanted to see some changes to the community grants, but I don't think we intended to reduce time for people. So I just wanted to see if it is in fact shorter, and is there anything we can do? The issue is that some of the community organizations don't have the full kind of grant staff, and even some of the folks on the caregiver side don't have a ton of grant writers, and so the reduction in time might have an impact on the quality of applications we receive. Does anyone have a comment? Okay, all right, I'm seeing thumbs up. Mr. Mihalik, did you want to say something? Okay. We also heard, I just want to comment on the Rockville Town Center desire to have, a meeting with the council. It's my understanding that we will be hearing an Engage Rockville, not the website, but just more broadly on ways that we're going to be getting out into the community as city staff, but also as council in the community.
That's correct. And we have upcoming special presentation on that topic.
Okay, and we'll be moving through different neighborhoods, of which Rockville Town Center could be.
It could be, yep.
Okay. Just seeing. All right. Okay. Anyone else have any other comments or questions? All right. There's one last idea as we think of Engage Rockville, and it doesn't have to be that staff organizes it. Maybe mayor and council could do it with our nonprofits, but a thought of a council cares, where the council would get out with nonprofit organizations and volunteer. It doesn't have to be everyone, but just who's available. Maybe we can space it out throughout the rest of our term. Mm-hmm. Would everyone be game for that? Thumbs up. Okay, all right, thank you.
I'm super quick on that.
Councilmember Valeri.
So kind of super quick on that, but not really. I'm just going to ask for a minor rebranding of Engage Rockville, because every time it is spoken, I keep thinking of only the website, and maybe it's just me. Maybe Engaging Rockville, something else. Because I have got to get the name of like the digital only out of my head, because every time it comes up, I'm like, why are we only doing digital? But I know that it's a lot more than that. On that note too, however things shake out, we have had residents from Town Center and Town Square that have been asking for some time, even, before many of us were elected, for a town hall so that they could feel heard. And so I would just want to put a plug in for kind of elevating them. Again, having heard, even before, how long that they have not felt like they've had that kind of space to have these conversations. And then sometimes the space is taken over by people who don't live in Rockville Town Center or Town Square, but maybe are adjacent to it. I think it would be good for the residents of the square and center to have a space to feel heard.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be brief, but you jog my memory with the council cares idea. So this is an idea that I've talked about with the city manager as well as others, and just want to put it out there, and we don't have to talk about it now, but I've been going around the city talking to various nonprofits and meeting with them, and it becomes apparent to me that there really is no coordination or way for them to kind of share ideas, share best practices, share issues with each other and with the city. So I was wondering if we can explore some staffer or some mechanism where we could convene nonprofits quarterly or biannually or whatever it is to kind of get them together, share ideas, and share what resources we have and that they have. It's just an idea I'm noodling around with, but I just clearly see a need for something like that.
Thank you, Councilmember. I know we talked and had similar ideas on sort of a nonprofit roundtable. The idea also is just sometimes they're able to share with us needs that the community is having or surges or issues so that we can be better as a city. And then also sometimes the nonprofits may not see the connection points that we do because they don't interact with each other as much as we do with them individually. So that's amplifying the power of the nonprofit community, and also just staying close to what they're hearing in the community would be great. So I fully support that. Councilmember Shaw.
Along with that, could we also include houses of worship that are doing similar services in the community?
Houses of worship.
Along with the community organizations, also including houses of worship that are doing similar services.
And perhaps that could also just be part of the engaging Rockville idea.
Catching on.
Yes, thank you. No, thank you, Council Member Shaw. That is my intent. So faith-based organizations, nonprofits. So not just community organizations, but nonprofits in general, especially, well, not especially, but including faith-based organizations. But thank you for the clarification.
Thank you, everyone, for building on ideas. Councilmember Fulton and then Councilmember Valeri.
You said building on ideas. I just want to clarify. Yes, I think that's a good idea, but I also don't think that it's a vague idea. We're asking to explore, like, is this feasible on what timeline and how could it be useful? We're not giving direction to do it on any particular timeline during old new business. I just want to make sure we're on the same page there.
I think one of the thoughts we can is just as the city is looking at engaging Rockville, that's going to come back to us for a fuller discussion. That could be one of the items that is raised.
And did we agree to just change Engage Rockville to Engaging Rockville? Because I was cool with Engage Rockville.
I actually will leave it to, I'm going to leave it to staff to come back.
I agree with that. I like that.
They are the experts. Councilman Valeri.
I'm a one-woman focus group, and it might just be me. On the idea that Councilmember Jackson stated, I realize that there's kind of a overlap here with the Human Services Advisory Commission, and I know that they gain a benefit from having the nonprofits at the table that they do. So that might be kind of a natural space to maybe start building out, and that also includes faith-based organizations as well. So I just want to put a plug in for them. And I know they're looking at a roundtable right now anyways on a different topic. So just wanted to note that.
Thank you for raising that we have a commission that could help on that. And you also reminded me that some of us participated in the focus group on the human needs assessment. This is a topic that actually came up from the focus group leaders as well on potentially convening nonprofits. I think there's a mind meld on this, but we will also be getting feedback from the survey as well as that work on the focus group that may have this and other ideas. So to your comment, Councilman Fulton, this is not being prescriptive on the timing because we need staff to work on that. I also want to note that we need to rehire a community outreach manager that's going to make these things sing and work. So I want to be respectful of the time and the process so that we have a solid person in place to make those dreams a reality. Okay, well, we said we were going to end at 9:30 and we have a chance to do that. Anyone wants to make a motion to adjourn?
Stretch it out 3 minutes.
No.
Motion to
Councilmember
adjourn.
Jackson, thank you. Who seconds? Councilmember Fulton seconds. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you.